WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, and KPNT HD2 Collinsville. 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
As we try and schedule these, we're looking for the right venue, we're looking for the right timing, and most important perhaps is we're looking for a matchup that's going to excite the fans and mean something to them. And the Blackhawks and the Blues have a great rivalry, so I think on all bases, as long as the weather cooperates, and again, we're hoping and expecting that it will, we're looking forward to a spectacular event.
That was Gary Bettman. No, not talking about tonight's game, but talking about the game that the Blues played in back in 2017. Blues back in the Winter Classic alongside Alex Ferrario, who is broadcasting live today from Wrigley Field, where the Winter Classic will be taking place later on this afternoon. Puck drop for that right here on 101 ESPN coming up at 4 o'clock. I'm Brandon Kiley. Bradford Braun's in with us back again today, producing this thing. Alex, we're going to set the stage to open things up today. I want to hear from you. You are broadcasting live right now. It is 11:05 in Chicago, where the Blues and Blackhawks will take the ice, the field, whatever you want to call it, later on this afternoon. What's the scene like out there prior to today's Winter Classic, Alex Ferrario?
Let me see if I can tell you all something that you've never heard before. It's windy, it's cold, and it's rainy. Exactly what you would expect in Chicago. I'm going to do something that our engineers are probably not going to like, but I'm going to go slow so we don't disconnect. But I'll turn this around so that everybody can see Wrigley Field up on our YouTube page at 101 ESPN STL. So where I'm sitting right now, so what we had the setup was supposed to be me sitting where the broadcast is going to be taking place next to the penalty box. And no, I'm not wimpy and not wanting to sit in the rain. I didn't want the computer to decombust. But let me tell you, the setup that they've got here at Wrigley Field, Busch Stadium was incredible for me, BK, but walking into Wrigley Field, I hadn't been here since 8th grade. Walking in to the friendly confines, seeing the just retro look of the field with the ivy, and then looking at this rink, the setup that the NHL has, it's next to none right now. So I am super pumped for this Winter Classic. It's still raining right now, but it's kind of like just a consistent mist, and all the weather reports are saying that by about 1 o'clock, they're expected to shift to snow, and then by about 3 o'clock, it's just expected to just be cloudy and windy. And I was talking to Braden Shen a couple of days ago, asking him what the best conditions are for the Winter Classic. He said cold, and he said snow. So I don't know if we're going to get the snow, but I know we're going to get the cold. But it looks like it's going to be a perfect day here for some hockey.
Well, it took a while for the Blues to be included in the Winter Classic. This thing started back in 2008. The first one was in Buffalo with the Penguins versus the Sabres, but since then, we've been doing it basically every single season. Blues got their first crack at it back in 2017 when they got to host it here in St. Louis. We saw them in Minnesota in 2022. That is remembered as the Jordan Kyrou game here in St. Louis, at least for me. And then now they're going to be once again involved in 2025. Alex, that means they've been a part of 3 Winter Classics over the last 7 years. This has been going on since 2008. The entire list of teams that have been involved with at least 3 Winter Classics, which is basically like the Super Bowl of the NHL's regular season. It's the biggest game that they have to offer. This is, if you're a team, this is what you want to be involved in, whether it's at home or on the road. You want to be a part of this because it's a national stage. It's a huge exposure opportunity for these teams. The entire list of teams that have been involved in 3 of them after today. The Boston Bruins, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the St. Louis Blues. That is 2 original 6 teams. The Penguins, who have the greatest player of this generation in Sidney Crosby, and then the St. Louis Blues, who are not an original 6 team, do not have a superstar on the roster right now, and really haven't throughout this entire time, unless you want to include Vladimir Tarasenko in that regard. Alex, in your opinion, why is it that the Blues are gaining this kind of exposure? What do you think it is about this organization that is so appealing to the NHL to put them in such a prominent spot?
I think it's a couple of things. One, it's success of the franchise. Like if you go back and look from 2011 all the way up until this season, the Blues have one of the top 5 point percentage teams, I believe, in the National Hockey League. That goes to show you the success that has been a mainstay for the St. Louis Blues for the longest time. You also have to look at consistency in terms of this team always spending to the salary cap, always being a team that is putting a competitive team on the ice. Even if you look at the last couple of years, BK, when they've been on the downturn of the retool, they've still put competitive teams out there. They just haven't looked the best. And then third, it's the watchability of this. I mean, no matter where Blues fans are at, I can tell you when we got to the hotel last night, there were about 25 Blues fans that were sitting in the bar talking about the Winter Classic. Blues fans travel. They travel to the games to buy tickets. They travel to the games to go to events, but then they always watch it. The viewership for Blues always seems to be in the top 5 of the National Hockey League. And I think what's most impressive is what you mentioned, BK. The Boston Bruins, for the longest time, have had Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, Zdeno Chara, Tim Thomas, Tuukka Rask. They've always had successful teams, but they've had those superstar-level players. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Marc-Andre Fleury, Chris Letang. They've always been there. And you're talking about a Blues team that if you were to ask a common fan on the street, just common NHL fan, who's the St. Louis Blues star? I think they would list probably about like 5 different players because they don't know if it's anybody at that level of Crosby. So
I think Benner would probably be number 1 on that list.
Probably, and that's just because the recognition of Jordan Binnington over these last few years in terms of the negative and the positive. But
and the cup. I think it's just the cup.
Yeah,
you know?
I think you're right. But that goes to show you, like, you point to somebody, Pittsburgh Penguins star, Sidney Crosby, Boston Bruins, David Pastrnak. You'd have to sit there and think a little bit with the Blues, and that goes to show you the success that this team has built up over time.
So to describe this, let's look at the tickets that are currently being sold for this week's college football playoff. This round, right? Texas versus Arizona State, get-in price. $22. Penn State versus Boise State, get-in price, $33. Georgia versus Notre Dame's, get-in price for the game tomorrow, $43. Those are 2 nationally relevant programs, man. Like 2 of the biggest fan bases that you can have. $43 for the college football playoff quarterfinals. And then Ohio State versus Oregon, the game of the week, the game that might be ultimately the one that decides the national championship. Get-in price, $153. Alex, what do you think the get-in price is for Blues versus Blackhawks in the Winter Classic later on this afternoon?
$375.
It's a little lower than that.
Okay, $175.
It's $218. It is $70 more than the most expensive ticket price for this round in the college football playoffs. The reason why I bring that up is because some might say, well, BK, yeah, of course it's more expensive. It's this national spotlight game. Yeah, it's a regular season game between 2 teams that play, 6 times this year?
Yeah.
This is
5,
the college football playoff quarterfinals, neutral site game. It's a big deal that these 2 teams are facing off. It's the rivalry. It's everything that goes involved with Blues, Blackhawks. It's Wrigley Field, a historic venue. You really can't ask for a whole lot more. So from the NHL's perspective, man, it's a lot of respect that they're giving to the St. Louis Blues to put them on this kind of a stage for the 3rd time. To have, Alex, did you say this is the first time that we've seen a rematch between teams in the Winter Classic? To do that for the 2nd time in this over the last 16 years, we're seeing that now. It's really impressive what they're doing right now for the St. Louis Blues.
Think of it this way, BK. We all agree Alex Ovechkin, like one of the best players in the National Hockey League. He's a star. He's chasing Wayne Gretzky. You know the last time Alex Ovechkin played in a Winter Classic?
Oh, man. 7 years?
2015.
Okay.
So that means the Blues have played in the Winter Classic 3 times since Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals have played in this one. And there's plenty of teams that have yet to play in a Winter Classic, but the Blues always get that call from the NHL because, 1, people are going to be watching it. 2, you know that the tickets are going to get sold. And 3, it's competitive hockey. And I think that Minnesota Wild game really kind of set the tone where the NHL was like, damn, we kind of should keep looking at the Blues because, man, that was an exciting hockey game. There was a lot of people that watched. I think that was top 5 in terms of the viewership of Winter Classics in the history of the game. And then, of course, the Busch Stadium one selling out the alumni game and the actual Winter Classic.
All right, so the last thing that I wanted to get to is we're talking with Alex Ferrario, who's broadcasting live today from Wrigley Field, where the Blues will be taking on the Chicago Blackhawks in the NHL's Winter Classic later on this afternoon. You'll hear that game right here, by the way, on 101 ESPN starting at 4 o'clock. But we're going to have pregame coverage for you starting at 2. We're going to take you all the way up until puck drop. We've got a long day of Blues pregame here on 101 ESPN, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Just keep it locked in from now until the end of the game. Alex Ferrario will be live for you out there at Wrigley Field all day today. Alex, I mentioned it earlier. The Blues versus the Wild game back in 2022. It is remembered for Jordan Kyrou and his coming out party on that day. I remember the conversations afterwards. It was basically, hey, who would you rather have, Kirill Kaprizov or Jordan Kyrou? Now, looking back on it, it's an absurd conversation. You'd rather have Kaprizov, and I say that as the resident Jordan Kyrou fan club president. What is today going to be remembered for? When we look back on this 3, 5, 7 years from now, the way that we now can with that Blues versus Wild game, what's it going to be remembered for in your mind, if anything?
I'm going to give you one name, and I feel like we're going to be stepping out of this game the same way we did with Jordan Kyrou from that Winter Classic against Minnesota. Jake Neighbors. I think this is going to be the coming out party of Jake Neighbors, which seems odd to say because last season seemed like it was the season coming out party with Jake Neighbors. This screams a Jake Neighbors type of game. You're taking on a Blackhawks team. These are going to be conditions where skill doesn't win you a hockey game. Like, again, talking to Braden Shen, sometimes in these types of games, you can't try and dangle around a couple of players or take that highlight reel play. You have to play simple hockey. Simple hockey means net front presence and deflection goals. I think this is going to be a Jake Neighbors game. I'm not going to be so bold to call a hat trick, BK, but I will say we are going to see multiple goals by Jake Neighbors today against Chicago. This feels like a coming out party for him.
I'm going to go with a different name. Similar in terms of answer, though. I'm going to have a forward on the Blues that is going to have his coming out party today nationally. We have seen him come out already throughout the season, but nationally, this will be the day that people remember the name Dylan Holloway. Yep. Dylan Holloway will be the one that is on full display. In his last 16 games, he has 16 points. That's 9 goals, 7 assists. He's a +5 in that stretch of games. He's been unbelievable for the St. Louis Blues over the last 15, 16 games now. I don't think he's getting enough attention nationally yet for what he's done. I think Broberg early on was the story because you had the big, offer sheets over the summer that the Blues were able to offer there. They end up getting Broberg as the big prize, right? Everybody was talking about Broberg. Even here locally, we were talking about Holloway as the afterthought. He was the consolation prize if they weren't able to get it done with Broberg. And this year, I think he has opened all of our eyes to what he can potentially be, which is maybe a top-line level talent. Well, I think tonight you're going to see 2 goals from Dylan Holloway in this game.
Oh.
And I think he is going to come away as the star of the game, first star in this one, and nationally people will be talking about not only did the Blues get a steal with Broberg, but Dylan Holloway, they might have been able to add a star, something they've been lacking lately with him as well. So I'll go with Dylan Holloway as my answer to the player that ends up having his coming out party tonight that we remember this game for.
I like that one, too. And for people that didn't see it, the lines yesterday, because they're not going to skate today, they obviously will come here and they get on the ice for pregame warmups. But yesterday, they had Brandon Saad skating with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich, which kept Holloway with Braden Shen and Jordan Kyrou. And then it was Neighbors, Sundqvist, and Zach Bolduc. So we'll see what those combinations look like. But, man, I'm in the line of thinking right now of putting Dylan Holloway on that top line with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. So whether it's Neighbors or Holloway, that's a big moment for the Blues if they can have one of those guys have a breakout game, BK, because as we saw with Jordan Kyrou, maybe he hasn't lived up to the Kirill Kaprizov level for a lot of people, but he has become a star in the NHL, and now who's the next guy that does that? He's
Alex Ferrario. He's broadcasting live today from Wrigley Field, where the Blues will be taking on the Blackhawks later on this afternoon. You will hear full pregame coverage following BK and Ferrario. That starts at 2 o'clock. Puck drop for that one right here in your home of the Blues, starting today at at 4. So keep it locked in. 101 ESPN is your home for Winter Classic coverage today here on the radio, as it is New Year's Eve, and Alex Ferrario has given us his full coverage out there from Wrigley Fields today. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll catch up with Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider for The Athletic. He's going to help us preview this game as well. Scottie Upshall, former Blues forward, will join us coming up at 12 o'clock, and Mike Rupp at 1:30. We're going to have plenty of Blues coverage throughout the day today here on 101 ESPN. But coming up next, wasn't a breakout game for Brady Cook yesterday, was potentially a legacy game for him, though, and we'll talk about it here on 101 ESPN.
St. Louis Blues hockey can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. Get the info you need before and after every Blues game with the First Community pre- and post-game show.
First Community Credit Union, calling St. Louis home for 90 years and powered by Scott Lee Heating Company.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Mizzou's going to mount the comeback. Fake to Roberts. Throws the deep ball. Got him in. Johnson, what a catch! Brett LeBlanc will snap it. First part's clean, and the kick has enough leg, and it is. Sullivan's going to try to sneak it himself. No! Hit twice! Corey Flag was all over him.
We're on the field ready to make the line again. There's a turnover on downs. First down.
Missouri's going to win the Music City Bowl.
That's what it sounded like yesterday on ESPN as Missouri wins 27-24 in the Music City Bowl, a game that we expected to be low scoring, and it was anything but. You got out to that first quarter, it was like, whoa, okay, we got 21 points in the first quarter. The over-under for this game is set at 40.5. We're already more than halfway there. This is not going the way anybody expected. It was an entertaining football game. And, Alex, this is why I get into it with T-Bone sometimes about like the importance of the bowls, the value of the bowls, whatever. It's not that these are like the end-all, be-all. That game did not matter yesterday. Missouri wins, loses, whether they made that kick, missed it, whether they got that stop on fourth down or didn't. It doesn't really change anything in the grand scheme of things. We all understand that. But for 3 hours yesterday, if you were a Missouri fan, you were glued to your television. If you were an Iowa fan, you were glued to your television because it was just an entertaining football game. And ultimately, isn't that what this is for? It's just to have a little bit of entertainment value at this point in the season, a celebration of the guys that have had so many good moments for your team. And that, to me, Alex, is what yesterday was. It was a celebration of Brady Cook. He did not have Luther Burden in that game available to him. For half of it, they didn't have the guy that was, at that point, their leading receiver in Theo Weiss. You didn't have your number one tight end. Brett Norfleet was injured, and he got surgery on his shoulder prior to the game yesterday. So most of his weapons were out. And what does Brady Cook go out there and do against one of the best defenses that Missouri has faced all season long in Iowa? He posts 287 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, runs for 54 yards, and becomes the first Missouri quarterback to do all of that while not throwing an interception in more than a decade. In one of the best games that we've seen by a Missouri quarterback in the last decade. And he did that in the bowl game without Luther Burden out there. To me, Alex, that's what I hope Mizzou fans remember about Brady Cook. The guy was clutch as hell. He won a boatload of football games. Over the past 2 seasons, the only teams that have more wins than Missouri: Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, SMU, Notre Dame. 8 teams in the country have more wins over the past 2 seasons than the Missouri Tigers. That is the legacy, ultimately, that Brady Cook will be leaving at Mizzou.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of those bowl games, yeah, they're not the most exciting, especially now with the college football playoffs, but the whole point of those bowl games are one last send-off for the guys that you've gotten to enjoy for the last 2, 3, 4 years. And for Brady Cook, I thought this was the most important game of his career. You're not in the college football playoffs. It was a lesser season in the sense of what Brady Cook did the prior year. And he goes out there and he posts his best game of the season against Iowa in the final game without some of his playmakers. I thought that was the most simple brand of football that Brady Cook has played. And frankly, that's the way you want to go out. You want to go out on top. And I thought it was the perfect way to send it off for Brady Cook. You're right. For a guy that I think took a lot of slack this season in terms of, he's not right, his throwing's not great, he's not connected with this offense, maybe he's not the quarterback we thought he was. The college football playoffs are gone. It's past now for Mizzou. But you did get that final game that gave you the final thought of like, damn, Brady Cook was a great quarterback for the fact that Mizzou finishes top 25 in back-to-back seasons in the AP poll at the end of the season, but they also finished with back-to-back 10 wins. And that is the staple that Brady Cook was a part of.
Somebody from the text line, 314-399-9646, by the way, is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube chat is off and running today, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. That's where the graveyard chat is available for you. From the 314, guys, what is Brady Cook's signature win? The big win that he had. That's what Mizzou fans are still waiting for. I think he had those last year. Against Kansas State, I thought that was a legit signature win for Brady Cook. He got booed before the game, leads the game-winning drive. That was a huge one for him. If you don't like that one as your example, okay, later on in the season against Tennessee, they won that game 36-7, beat the hell out of them. Now, Brady Cook wasn't the driving force behind that. Cody Schrader was. But Brady Cook had a good game in that one. What about the drive against Florida? 4th and 17, I believe it was. He throws it over the middle to Luther Burden. Huge conversion there. Leads another game-winning drive. If you don't like that one this season, the drive that he had against Auburn, coming back from the hospital to finish that game. Like, That is, in my opinion, a legacy kind of drive. Now, this season, he did not have a signature win. I can't argue that. You didn't beat Texas A&M. You didn't beat Alabama. You didn't beat South Carolina. You needed to win one of those 3 games in order to get the signature victory this season. It's why they're not playing currently in the college football playoff. That's it. The reason why they did not end up making it there is because they did not win any of those games, and in 2 of them, they got their butts whipped. To be fair, he's not available against Alabama. Yeah. And against Texas A&M, I'm not sure he was fully at 100%, but whatever.
Well, and your defense was terrible in that game.
And they lost. Like, there's no getting around it. They lost the game. They did not look prepared. They had a few really bad plays early on. A couple of penalties came back to hurt them. Like, we don't have to relitigate it, but they did everything that they could this year in order to try to give themselves a chance. And the way that I'm going to remember Brady Cook is that he won 10-plus games, as Alex said, in back-to-back seasons, something that has only been done 3 times now in the history of Missouri's program. That means something. So here's a question for you, Alex, and I'm curious your thoughts on this as well, Bradford, because I know you're a Mizzou fan too. When you look back on it, like, to me, Chase Daniel, Brad Smith, you look at the last 25 years of Mizzou football, those guys stand above the rest, because without them, none of the rest of it is possible. Without Brad Smith, for me specifically, Chase Daniel never comes to Mizzou. So that guy has to be towards the top of the list of the best quarterbacks since 2000. So I would have them in tier 1. Beyond that, it's Drew Lock, it's James Franklin, it's Brady Cook, it's Gabbert. I think those are the next 4 to me that would be in the conversation. How would you rank those guys and how you remember them for their time at Mizzou? Lock, Franklin, Cook, Gabbert. What order would you put those guys in, Alex?
Man, I think I would go Lock at number 1. I would go Cook at 2, Gabbert at 3, and Franklin at 4. And I don't really have any reason. Like, I think 3, 4 could be interchangeable. I think Drew Lock started what Brady Cook continued and grew bigger. Like, Drew Lock was kind of the start for me to where it's like, damn, this is competitive football for Mizzou. You're in the SEC. You're competing night in and night out, and you're close. And then Brady Cook took it to the next level. And I think a lot of the Brady Cook success, though, is Eli Drinkwitz and the recruiting/transfer portal. So I'd go Lock 1, and then I would go Brady Cook 2.
Yeah, I'm not disputing where you're putting Locke in that situation, Alex. For me, I actually elevate Franklin a little bit over Gabbert simply because when you think about the end days for Franklin, it was the tail end of the Big 12 era and then going into SEC play initially, and he did pick up a pair of bowl victories as well, so really solidified his stranglehold on that position. For Cook, to me, though, I really reflect on what he has done in the past 2 seasons. And that first year, 2021 on the job, it was kind of that ho-hum pedestrian campaign, right? You went 6-7, but to have gone through so many different trials and tribulations in the last 2 seasons alone, however you want to categorize the reception that he received last season, pre-Kansas State game, and then thereafter, did nothing but continue to win. And I'm going to look at him as really the face of the program for the last couple of years and representing something, symbolizing something that we just do not see enough in college athletics today. The full all-out commitment and then having that thoroughly satisfying arc. You won a Cotton Bowl, and this season, while you didn't qualify for the CFP, another 10-win campaign, and closing it out in that manner, it was fitting because he once again had to author another comeback coming back from 10 down. So for me, Cook is very close to Locke. I'd even almost put them lock in step with each other, quite honestly.
So I like what you did there.
Yeah, so to me, without question, obviously, when you're talking about moving beyond that rung, Locke ever so slightly maybe has the edge on Cook, but from a story standpoint, I think that, and I'm not a prisoner of the moment. I think Cook is, right there.
Rankings?
Yeah,
we got lost in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Locke, Cook, Franklin, followed by Gabbert.
Okay, so I have Locke, Franklin, Cook, Gabbert. That would be my next 4. Somebody on the text line said, guys, what about Chase Daniel? Yeah, he's number 1. Yeah. Chase 1. Yeah. Brad Smith, 2. Those are in a separate category entirely. Yeah, he's at the bottom. Mock, Kelly Bryant, Connor Bazelak, those guys are at the bottom of this list. I would have Mock at the top of those 3, but I would go Mock, Bryant, Bazelak, Pine somewhere in there as well if you want to throw that in the conversation. The middle tier here, I think Drew Lock was just the most talented of these guys. And if you put him, like if I replaced Brady Cook with Drew Lock, I think this team's more successful. It's no shot against Brady Cook. It's just that we saw last week what Drew Lock was capable of doing in the NFL. I don't think Brady Cook is capable of doing that. Drew Lock's I think he's probably the most talented quarterback at Mizzou over the last 25 years. And if you put him into a better situation, he was not in a good one, I think he would have had a lot more success. So I'll have lock one of those guys, Franklin 2, because the guy did push them to an SEC championship game. We got to give him credit for that. In his first full season as a starter, he was amazing as well before the injuries started to take their toll. So Luck, Franklin, Cook, Gabbert, that's the way that I will remember them ultimately, I think, as we get further away from this. But Brady Cook had one hell of a Mizzou career, 20 plus wins over the last 2 seasons. Not too shabby. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. But coming up next, Jeremy Rutherford joins us to talk about this Winter Classic as Alex Ferrario is broadcasting live from Wrigley Field, where the Blues and the Blackhawks will play in the Winter Classic later on today. Jared joins us to discuss it next year on 101 ESPN.
The Blues season is in full swing, and you can tune in this Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. to hear BK and Ferrario live from the E&B Granite Studio at the Centene Community Ice Center.
Brought to you by Bud Light for the fans on game day, and by E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Extra special setting for Blues Blackhawks. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. This afternoon at Wrigley Field, hockey takes center stage once again. The latest Winter Classic finds Central rivals St. Louis and Chicago battling it out. 101 ESPN has puck drop right after 4 o'clock. STL captured said showcase event back in 2017, Busch Stadium style, beating Chi-Town 4-1. Pigskin finals from yesterday. Mizzou edging Iowa 27-24. Brady Cook snares Music City Bowl MVP honors with 341 total yards, plus 2 scores. Detroit, meanwhile, races past San Francisco 40-34, concluding NFL Week 17. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Quick update from the ReliaQuest Bowl where Alabama is taking on Michigan, the team that everybody said, can't put Indiana in. Can't put SMU in. Got to have Alabama in the playoff. Well, they're getting their butts whipped. They're down 13-0, 10 minutes into this game. They have 3 turnovers on their last 4 offensive plays. Do Alabama, Michigan looking to potentially go in for another touchdown here to put them up by 3 possessions. So it turns out the team that lost to both Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, not particularly flawless. Who could have seen that one coming? All right, with that as the backdrop, we go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by Jeremy Rutherford. He's the Blues insider for The Athletic. He's going to be covering today's game between the Blues and the Blackhawks at Wrigley Field for the Winter Classic as well. Alex Ferrario is already up there set up at Wrigley where the game will be taking place later on this afternoon. JR, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Still here at the hotel trying to pull off the veteran move where you show up a little bit before puck drop. Alex already over there, but I'm assuming he had to do that to be on the radio with you guys.
Yeah, overachiever, JR. I just wanted to be the first one here on the field and let everybody know the weather update. It's cold and it's wet.
It is. And I did a 15-minute walk today in the rain, and there was not a rainbow at the other end, but there was a pancake house at the other end.
Hey, sometimes those are better. Just like there's a pot at the end of the rainbow, for JR, it's a stack of pancakes.
All right, JR.
So, no, we're looking forward to this.
Let's get into this. This is the third one the Blues have been a part of over the last, I think it's 7 years at this point. What has your experience been like with the Winter Classics? What is it about it that appeals to you specifically?
I think being in the stadium all 3 times, both in St. Louis in 2017 at Busch Stadium and then at Target Field in Minnesota a couple years ago. And we were at the stadium yesterday, and you could already start to feel the vibes. You know, listen, are people in Seattle and Florida and Pittsburgh, Buffalo going to tune into this game? You know, the ratings in Buffalo, Pittsburgh have been good in the past, but I don't think anybody wakes up today and says, I'm going to watch the Blues and Blackhawks. But I think Gary Bettman has this one right when he tries to tell people that if you're in the environment, if you're part of one of these teams, if you have tickets to the game, if you experience this with loved ones, this is something that you're going to remember forever. So, you know, just because the ratings might not be great or people around the league might not talk about it, it's still something that's going to be talked about for years here. And most importantly, it's not about a good game and whether this is a 6-5 game back and forth, people love it. Yeah, sure, that would be great, guys. But it's about a moment. It's a signature moment. People still talk about Sidney Crosby. So, you know, if Connor Bedard has one of those types of moments today or somebody with the Blues does, people in St. Louis, Chicago are going to be talking about it, and I think around the league as well.
Yeah, well, you think of those moments for the Blues. 2017, it was Vladdy Tarasenko having 2 goals. Most recently against Minnesota, it was Kyrou with his 2 goals and 4 points. But, JR, BK and I were talking about this at the show open. What does it say that the Blues just continue to get selected? That's 3 Winter Classics in 8 years in terms of a team that really doesn't have the same type of superstars like Chicago or Pittsburgh or even teams like Boston do.
To me, Alex, this is a situation where the Blues have an outstanding relationship with the league. And just think about it. Like when you want to have people over to your house or you want to have a get-together, a picnic, go out to dinner with people, who do you invite? You invite people who you get along with, you work with, you know are professional, you know do a great job. And in having conversations with the Blues, in these past 8 years that they've been invited to these 3 Winter Classics, that's a big part of this. I'm not saying it's everything. Yes, you have to have a good organization, good team, a team that people want to watch. But I think it's about knowing that the Blues do a good job with these and that there's a response with the fan base. Chris Zimmerman, Chappius, they all do a tremendous job with this. Tom Stillman, the ownership group on down, a tremendous job with building that relationship with the league. And then the Blues are one of the first teams that they call whenever they have a spot for one of these.
We're talking to Jeremy Rutherford here on 101 ESPN. JR, Alex mentioned you had the Vladdy Tarasenko game. You had the Jordan Kyrou game. As you think about this, and this is projecting, who knows, right? We're all going to be wrong at this probably. But who do you think, who would you call to have a big game today? Who do you think is going to have their national breakout party this afternoon for the Blues?
Well, I heard you guys talking and having that conversation, and you're talking about the Dylan Holloways and the Jake Neighbors, and I don't disagree with those whatsoever. But I think that a lot of times in these games, like we saw with Tarasenko a couple years ago in St. Louis, it's a guy that you're familiar with, a guy who can rise to that occasion. I'm going to go with Robert Thomas, and that's not necessarily a breakout game, but I think he's a guy who really wants to take on this leadership role. We just saw the Winter Classic, Road to the Winter Classic, Episode 4 released, and you had Jim Montgomery mic'd up behind the bench, and he tells Robert Thomas, we need you to be that leader. We need you. Come on, we're following you. Let's go. And here's a situation. Robert Thomas talked to him after the game yesterday. He had his new young daughter out there in the ice for the family skate. He's really soaking this up. I think he's going to rise to the occasion and be that guy.
So, JR, on that same line of thinking, when you see a Robert Thomas kind of rising to that occasion, they didn't do that against the Buffalo Sabres. And there's been times this season where those top guys haven't risen to the occasion. And I know this is kind of a spectacle, but it's also an important game for a Blues that you can't lose back-to-backs trying to get into the playoffs. What do you think the importance level is on a game like this against Chicago?
You just can't, yeah. And the 2 Winter Classics that the Blues have played in Chicago and Minnesota, it was, to me, a spectacle. It was the first and the second time that they've been involved. Sure, the pomp and circumstance is going to be there today with this environment, but this is a game they have to win. If you're going to be that playoff team that Doug wants to be, that competitive team, and I think they've responded to Jim Montgomery well. Obviously, the record early on when he came here was better than it's been recently. They had things kind of clicking with the way they played, even in losses to Florida, Tampa Bay. You get the nice win against a bad Detroit team. But that loss to Buffalo stings. And if you come in here and kind of get caught up in the circumstances, lose to a bad Chicago team that's dropped 4 in a row, now you're starting the new year off with a Buffalo loss, a Chicago loss. It's just not going in the right direction. So, to me, yeah, enjoy it today. Soak it up, but the Blues have to come away with a win against a team like this.
All right, JR, last question that I've got for our Blues insider for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. He'll have updates today, throughout the day, from Wrigley, where the Blues are going to be participating in the Winter Classic. This is a must-win game. Not a must-win. It's a game they need to win.
Right.
It's also a big one for Binnington, I feel like. And I would assume he's going to be in net for the Blues. This is kind of the ceremonial type of a game where you're going to want him in there, if nothing else. But beyond that, it feels like this is a big moment for him where I don't know what the plan's going to be in net over the next few, potentially over the next few weeks prior to that 4 Nations face-off break. How do you view this in terms of the importance for Binnington to be able to continue to claim the starter's net moving forward?
Yeah, I think it depends on the conditions. I really do. I mean, if you've got sloppy conditions and, a couple squirt by him that you kind of look at him and say, hey, that's the conditions. That's one thing. If he gets beat for 5 or 6 goals here and the Hawks win, 5-6-2, that's going to be a tough one to swallow with the situation with Jordan Binnington. The one thing I'll say, though, is this. December, if you look statistically, I don't think has been a great month throughout his career. Not to make excuses, but trends are trends. And secondly, there has been a lot going on lately with Jordan Binnington with the 4 Nations invitation, with surpassing Mike Liute as the all-time wins leader, with this road to the Winter Classic, with with the game today, the mask, there's just so much that's going on. I think he needs to get back to doing what he does best, stopping pucks. To me, he's the clear-cut number one goalie for this team. Sure, if Joel Hofer continues to play well and Binnington doesn't, I think, then you got a little bit of a quandary on your hand. But I think right now you still have to have the faith in Jordan Binnington. I think he's been, outstanding the first couple months of the season. Slipped up here a little bit this last month, but there's a chance for him to get back on track. And, again, can't say this enough. Depends on the conditions today.
Totally fair. JR, we appreciate the time as always, man. Appreciate your perspective today. Enjoy your New Year's Eve this evening and enjoy the game later on this afternoon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
You got it. That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us as he does each and every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario. We're going to continue talking about the Winter Classic with Scottie Upshall, man, that was a part of the 2017 game here in St. Louis. He'll join us coming up at 12 o'clock. We'll talk to Mike Rupp, former NHL forward, now with the NHL Network. He joins us at 1:30, breaking this game down in every possible way for you here on BK and Ferrario. Alex Ferrario is broadcasting live from Wrigley Field. He'll be there all afternoon. He's got a 2 o'clock pregame show that's going to take you up until 4 o'clock right here on 101 ESPN. The game puck drop starting at 4. We've got everything covered in every way possible here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Coming up next, let's get into questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line here on BK and Ferrario.
Tomorrow is a college football playoff triple header. Game 1, the Peach Bowl. Game 2, the Rose Bowl. Game 3, the Sugar Bowl. Coverage starts at noon. The NCAA plays on 101 ESPN. TMA? Then nominate yourself to be the Morning After Listener of the Month. Sign up now at 101ESPN.com or TMASTL.com.
The TMA Listener of the Month Club is quenched by Milagro Tequila. Welcome to a brighter side of tequila with Milagro Tequila.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. This one comes from the 314. Alex, if the Cardinals can't trade Arenado, do you think they would be more willing to listen to offers on somebody like Brendan Donovan?
I don't think more willing isn't the right phrase. I don't think there's ever a situation you look to trade Brendan Donovan unless you're getting something back that helps you for the now and for the future. Like Nolan Arenado, you're trying to help you for the now and the future to open up a position for Nolan Gorman. Just because you have Nolan Arenado doesn't mean you should get rid of an asset that you think is a good part of your team. Donovan wouldn't be the first one I'd look at, BK. Like I would, if Arenado was here, the first one that I would be looking at, and I know people don't like it, is Nolan Gorman. And I mean, look, you're giving up on 40 home run potential. He's young. I totally get that. But what could you get in return that benefits your team with Nolan Gorman if you can't play him at third base? And then the other is Lars Nootbaar.
I'm not looking to move any of those young guys. I would just
totally get it.
It's an unfortunate reality that they might not be able to move Nolan Arenado this offseason because he decided to exercise his no trade clause. I'm not moving young talent just because you're quote-unquote stuck with Arenado. So it would not change my stance on any of that. It sounds like for the Cardinals, what might change is their willingness to then go out and make a move with Eric Fedde or somebody like that to kind of move off of some of that money. But yeah, I don't think it really changes a whole lot in terms of how I'm approaching those young players. All right, from the 314. Do you guys think that any of the top seeds will lose their game in the college football playoffs? So they're talking about instead of the top seeds, let's say the favorites. Right? Yeah. Because Texas is not the top seed in their game. Arizona State is, but Texas is a 12.5-point favorite. Yeah. Do you think that Ohio State is actually favored against Oregon, interestingly enough? So do you think Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, or who is it tonight? Penn State. Do you think one of those four will end up losing, Alex?
I think because Ohio State's the favorite, I think Ohio State could lose. I think Oregon is the better team. The one that I just don't know how to read, BK, is, I really like Boise State, but Penn State looked like a freaking juggernaut last week. Is that because they played just a really bad opponent, or is it because they're just that dominant? So I would just keep an eye on. I like Boise State. So I think those are the two that I could see get upset.
I like Boise to cover. I do not think they win outright, but I do think they cover. I think the spread is a little bloated in that game. I like Texas outright, and I think they win that game by the points. I think they win by 2 touchdowns. I think Oregon wins outright, so I do think that they end up winning that game and then covering that spread, of course, because they're a 2.5-point underdog. And then I like Notre Dame to win it straight up. So I've got most of the underdogs covering the spread with 2 of them winning outright in Oregon and Notre Dame. The one game that I kind of see the way that Vegas does right now is that Texas-Arizona State game. I don't think Arizona State is up to snuff there.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there.
Do you have an upset pick, Bradford?
I'm loving the Fighting Irish because I really do question whether Stockton in that scenario is going to be a bit more shell-shocked. I know he's had additional time with which to prepare, but this narrative to me has been completely overblown about Georgia somehow being better off without Beck at quarterback there. I'm not seeing it, and Marcus Freeman has had that defense humming for some time now. Unless you get a superhuman performance from ETN in the backfield and control time of possession, I don't think the Bulldogs get it done. I don't.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube chat is available for you as well. YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL. We've got Scottie Upshall in about 5 minutes or so. Former Blues forward ahead of today's Winter Classic. From the 314, Alex, do you think that the Blues will be aggressive buyers at this year's trade deadline?
I don't think aggressive buyers is where they'll be, because to me, aggressive buyers is selling prospects and draft picks to bring in a player. I think if they're going to bring in somebody, it's going to be a change of scenery type of move to where they move out of Brandon Saad, Nick Leddy, something like that, bring in something that can help them. But, I mean, I know people don't like it and they laugh at it because it's a cliche saying, but I think Dvorsky and Jimmy Snuggerud are going to be their trade deadline acquisitions in terms of their offense because their defense is set. You're not bringing anybody in to do anything with your defense. Your goaltending is set. What you're doing is you're bringing in somebody to bring in offense for your top six and a second-line center. And welcome to Snuggerud and Dalibor Dvorsky.
I'm with you. I do not think they're going to be aggressive buyers. I'd kind of like to see it. Like, I use this name as a placeholder and nothing more, and you guys know how much I love him. Chris Kreider is very much readily available right now in the trade market, it seems like.
I don't think that should be a placeholder. I think that should be something they should explore. The question is, would the Rangers take on what the Blues are giving? Because if they could swap Saad for Kreider, I would do that in a heartbeat.
And then you're probably giving up a draft pick or something in return as well. But like that's the kind of move that I would like to see them go out there and make. It is aggressive, but it's not, you know, trading for a 26-year-old with 3 years of control remaining on their contract that you're going to have to give up a first-round pick plus to go out there and acquire. So
yeah,
I would like to see them do something. I do not think it's particularly likely. All right, from the 314. Guys, I've got an outside-the-box trade idea. Cool. Love to hear your thoughts.
I love these.
Arenado for Luis Castillo. Castillo straight up. Money's pretty even. Mariners need a third baseman. Both teams would improve their own current biggest weakness. Castillo is somebody that the Mariners are apparently trying to get rid of, and Arenado certainly is somebody that could use a fresh start. I like it in theory. Castillo has 3 years remaining of club control, $24 million per year. The Cardinals could basically just eat the contract on Arenado. Here's the problem. The Mariners are trying to trade him for the same reason that the Cardinals are trying to trade Arenado. They're trying to move money off of the books. And by acquiring Arenado, they're just having a swap of bad money potentially. So if they would just rather repurpose the money and they're fine having that amount of money on the books, I think it's a really interesting proposition, Alex. I like Luis Castillo. I think he's a really good pitcher, and I think it could help the Cardinals. What do you think about that possibility?
I like it. I think that benefits the Cardinals because you're bringing in a good pitcher. The other problem with that scenario is Arenado not wanting to go to Seattle.
Yeah, for sure. That's the biggest problem.
I mean, like it's still the West Coast technically, but I mean, that's going to be, I mean, if he's not willing to go to Houston, who actually seems like they're pretty competitive still, I don't see how he would be willing to go to Seattle. But I mean, if you're telling me I could bring back a pitcher that fits in as a 2 or 3 for me, the same amount of money as Nolan Arenado, and I open up that third base spot, that's making yourself competitive while also opening up the areas for those younger players like you talked about.
The other thing is you could still sell Mats. This allows you to freely trade Eric Fedde, so you're opening up the $18 million there potentially between the two salaries. And now you look at your rotation, it's like, okay, so I've got Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo as my 1-2. Feel pretty good about that, honestly.
Absolutely.
Then you look at the back end of your rotation, you still have Michaelis here, which, whatever. McGreevy, Palante, maybe Quinn Matthews midway through the season. Dude, that rotation is starting to look pretty interesting, and you opened up the opportunities that you needed to via your young infielders. I love the idea. It requires a lot of maneuvering, and it's really more the other people that are involved in the trade other than just the Cardinals. The problem is if I like it as much as I do, it probably means either the Mariners or Nolan Arenado don't like it. Somebody else involved probably wouldn't enjoy that trade, which means it's all probably a moot point, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's fun to dream, though, isn't it?
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's fun to come up with those mock trades.
All right, he's Alex Ferrario. He's broadcasting live from Wrigley Field, where the Blues are going to be taking on the Blackhawks later on this afternoon in the Winter Classic. Scottie Upshall was a part of the Blues' last Winter Classic game against the Chicago Blackhawks. It took place here in St. Louis back in 2017. He's going to join us to relive some of the memories from that game, talk about what it's like to participate in really the crown jewel of the NHL's regular season. Scottie Upshall, former NHL forward, joins us next here on 101 ESPN.
Jamie Rivers here, and this is my latest jersey giveaway of the season. It is a signed Jordan Binnington Winter Classic jersey, the OG, the original from the very first one at Busch Stadium. It is awesome. We all love that baby blue, and you'll look great wearing it too. Get entered to win that autographed Binner jersey right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Winner must be 21 or older. Jersey giveaway is refreshed by Bud Light. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
And Ferrario, Alex Ferrario with you live from Wrigley Field, where the Winter Classic will be taking place in about 4.5 hours. BK, not as cool spot. He's back in our 101 ESPN studio, but probably a cooler spot than all of these is where Scottie Upshall is. Former St. Louis Blue, of course, played with that Blues team back in 2017 Winter Classic at Busch Stadium, but Scottie is taking time out of his busy schedule from the Bahamas to come on with us today. Scottie, it is great to catch up with you, my man. Thank you so much. How are you?
What's up, boys? Things are... I
think we might have lost Scottie.
Yeah, we'll try to get a good connection with Scottie here in just a moment. It turns out when you're down in the Bahamas, you're on vacation. It's not the easiest thing to have a great phone line connection for us, Alex. But
understandably so.
We'll get him back on the line here in just a little bit. Alex, we're going to ask him this question, but I do want to ask you, because you were there as well. 2017, Blues take on the Blackhawks in the Winter Classic. Do you have a favorite memory, favorite moment from that game?
Man, it's funny. So coming up later, 2 o'clock, I got an interview with Paul Stastny, who also played in that game. And my memory isn't from the Winter Classic, BK. My memory is from the alumni game. And that happened on the 31st. So that happened like 2 days before the Winter Classic actually took place. But it was just the buildup of it all. And fun thing, that was the last alumni game ever played before a Winter Classic. That was the last time they played it. So you got to see, I think it was 8 Hall of Famers and 3 guys who will be in the Hall of Fame at some point in terms of like Keith Tkachuk and a couple of these other guys. That for me was the cooler moment, because getting to watch those guys on the ice, but then afterwards in the locker room, you saw guys like Scottie Upshall walking around, shaking hands, getting autographs from Brett Hull and things like that. So as cool as that Winter Classic was, it was also that alumni game that was just as cool. And I think we got Scottie Upshall back with us on the phone lines from the Bahamas. Scottie, we were just talking about this. As much fun as that 2017 Winter Classic game was for you guys, how exciting was that alumni game, getting to watch all of those former Blues suit up?
Oh, it was unbelievable, Alex. Listen, that whole week was one of the highlights of my NHL career. And, I was fortunate enough to play 15 years. Some of my most, fond memories being in St. Louis. But leading up to that, you got HBO following you around. You just got all your family in town for January 1st, celebrating not just the New Year, but, a Winter Classic game. And the NHL does such a good job with just bringing in the greats. And St. Louis, being fortunate enough to be an alumni of the St. Louis Blues, the lineup they put together with Gretz, Hully, Pronger, McGinnis, the whole group of guys back was incredible. And boys, Busch Stadium at that time, I mean, it was a rainy day, but it was unbelievable. Like, the fans showed up cheering, all the bars outside were still rocking. It was a great atmosphere, and one that's going to be amazing today, too, for the boys at Wrigley Field. It's going to be special.
Take us inside, Scottie. What is the preparation like for a game like this? What are the ticket requests like from the family? Like, take us through what this week is like for a player leading into the Winter Classic.
Well, you don't really get to size up, to do like a Super Bowl type game, right? But this is exactly that. The dates on the calendar, the teams are decided well in advance. The family members all put aside their family vacation to get in, for that Christmas vacation into, hey, by the way, we're thinking about joining you in Chicago too for the Winter Classic, right? And it's not just friends and family, it's aunt and uncles, it's cousins, it's the whole 9 yards. But these guys are in a special opportunity. I mean, Wrigley Field, guys, is such a historic venue with some of the, the most amazing plays in baseball history happening there, right? And the history just goes so far back. But, to play hockey with the young stars that not only the St. Louis Blues have, but also the Chicago Blackhawks this year, the family, friends, they're all fired up. The way that the teams put together, events in and around. I remember what went on at like Cafe Napoli, right, in Clayton for us. Like, all the families were there, pregame, postgame. So these guys in Chicago, I'm sure they're having a blast, boys, not just celebrating the new year, but getting ready right now for a big game and one that they'll always remember.
Scottie, going back to that game, of course, you mentioned you had been in the league 15-plus years at the time, somebody who has seen kind of a lot at the NHL level. But from a veteran's perspective, what was that like watching guys who maybe had never played in a Winter Classic before or had just been in the NHL for their first season?
Yeah, listen, guys, I was, that was probably year 13 for me, right? 2017, I was drafted in 2002. What I do remember, guys, is, having my dad in the dressing room, before, after the game. If you guys recall, it was a little bit of a rain delay on that January 1st for us. So we were in the dressing room. We were in the St. Louis Cardinals dressing room for probably 6 to 7 hours before the game. Yeah. And the cool part is the batting cage, right? We're all in, we're pitching to each other, we're hitting balls. And I remember HBO being like, are you guys cool with us videotaping this? We're like, hell yeah. What else are we going to do? Like, we got time, right? We got time. I ain't put on my skates yet. There's no way I'm putting on my skates yet. They don't even know when puck drop's going to be. So if you think about a rain delay for not only the players, but the fans and just how, many people showed up to that. And come game time, it was foggy. It was a little bit suspect on the ice, like the way the rain had kind of settled. It was more of a curling rink than an ice rink. But come puck drop, the atmosphere was incredible. Fireworks going off. Vladdy scored a big goal for us in that game to win it. Mm-hmm. It was back and forth. I have one of my most memorable photos, in my career. It looks like I score on Crawford. I come in, and I think Yaskin threw me one back door, and I make a move, and I do like this Bobby Orr fly through the air. And it makes for a memorable photo. But I didn't score. But I often tell people, like, it could have went posting in instead of went posting out.
That's the best part of the picture, Scottie. You don't have to tell them what happened. It's just like, of course that one went in.
You can't tell, boys. You can't tell, but you just gotta talk it up.
Hey, Scottie, I am curious because you mentioned, rainy conditions. You guys got on the ice, and then the rain went away. It was like perfect weather for you players. It's raining kind of now at Wrigley. It's supposed to kind of clear out. Is there an ideal weather condition for a Winter Classic like this for you guys?
You know what, guys? Mother Nature does its own thing. And I think the special thing about hockey is that, as good of a sport as it is inside, the game was born outside, right? The game was born on a pond. It's where we all live those moments with our friends and our brothers and sisters as kids going, this is Game 7, Stanley Cup final. You're either in net or you're shooting, and that was all outside. So for us, those conditions was rain or shine, frost or no frost. Mom calling you in for dinner time and you just saying, nah, I'm good. I'll eat tomorrow. Things are fine. We're good out here, Mom. Those are the memories we all have as hockey players and as kids. It makes our sport so beautiful. And today, if it's rain, it's a little bit of rain. I was in New York with my kids this past week and very fortunate enough to take them skating out on, this Bryant Park, beautiful with the Christmas tree in the back. And it was pouring rain. And I'm like, what am I doing out here? But I'm with my 2 young kids and they're just having this memorable experience. One day they'll see the photos and all that stuff, and that's the special thing about a frozen pond or a situation where they're freezing the ice at Wrigley Field for a hockey game. Sunny and bluebird skies ideal, but we'll take a little sleet, a little rain, a little snow. It's good no matter what is the way I want to say it.
Scottie Upshall is our guest for just another minute or two here on 101 ESPN. Former Blues forward, played in the 2017 Winter Classic here in St. Louis. All right, Scottie, we've been asking all our guests today this. In 2017, you guys had a big game from Vladdy Tarasenko. Had the 2 goals in that one. A couple of years ago, Blues back in the Winter Classic, and it's Jordan Kyrou. Couple of goals, 4 points in that one. Ended up being kind of a breakout party for him nationally. If you had to pick somebody from the Blues today that you think could have a big game for them and a national spotlight moment, who would you go with for the Blues in this year's Winter Classic?
Boys, there's a lot of choices, and a lot of these young kids on the Blues, I really love the way they're playing. But for me, I like Dylan Holloway, what he's done this year, stepping up, a big acquisition from Army and Steiner this year. But I just love how he's a gamer. I love Jake Neighbors, so expect a big game out of him. But what Tomer's been doing and Kyrou lately is awesome. But if you look at a Ryan Suter tonight, go out there knowing that probably this is his last year, and what a memorable experience for him being from Wisconsin, It's kind of his neck of the woods. I don't know if he was a Cubs fan growing up, but I'm sure, he was a guy that always played. Listen, he played baseball and threw a baseball with Shea Weber before hockey games back when we were with the Predators. That was their warm-up, was like tossing a football, tossing a baseball. They had arms on them. So look for maybe a little veteran like Suter to go out and have a big game tonight. But all those guys I mentioned is what make the St. Louis Blues the character they have, such a good team. And the way Monty has them playing since Monty's come over, you can't count them out. So, I'm taking them, boys. DraftKings line is favored of the Blues. I'm taking them all day long here today.
I love that one. Scotty, final one for you. And, of course, Scottie Upshall, the former Blue, but also on the Missing Curfew podcast, a really awesome podcast that he and Shane O'Brien put together. What are your thoughts on this Blues team overall, Scotty? Because we've talked a lot about how they seem like they're a bubble team in the Western Conference, bringing in Jim Montgomery, have all of this talent. Where do you see this Blues squad?
I see them as a positive group led by the Shenners and adding Cam Fowler and Falk. Like these guys, they've been there before, but they're a team that you just look out if they get in, right? So look out if they get in. You talked about a bubble team. They're going to go on, maybe they're not going to size up against the big boys and beat the Edmontons and the Florida Panthers, day in, day out. But, when they can go into Minnesota and size up and beat them in close games, you got to expect that this team is hungry to get in the playoffs again, is hungry to show that they can be, an 8th or 7th seed, a wild card team that gets in and fights. And I love the mentality that they carry. It's from the top down, and I truly, you guys know how I think about Alex Steen and what he's been able to bring to the management side of things. I really love the moves they made, and I think that they're a team, boys, that look out if they get in. They're a feisty group led by a great coach with great leaders and good young players that are all finding ways to contribute, from the Dylan Holloways to the Jake Neighbors and those boys. So I love the group.
Scotty, always appreciate you hopping on with us, man. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule out in the Bahamas. So happy New Year to you, buddy, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Guys, thanks. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Scottie Upshall, former St. Louis Blue, part of the Missing Curfew podcast. You see it on NHL Network as well, BK. And, of course, playing in that 2017. I remember that flying through the air play that Scottie Upshall had, and I think I do remember joking with him. It's like, man, it looked like the goal was going in, it just didn't go in. So it's all
that
cool
you need
to remember
is the still image. That's it.
Yep.
If you get the still image out of that, Alex, you and I have kids. Even if okay, let's go to the Santa photos, right? You can be with Santa for 15 minutes if you really needed to. If you get one good shot, it's all that matters. He was on the ice, I believe it was 12 minutes in the Winter Classic. He got a still image that he can put in his house and he can feature in the man cave. You have people over, you're downstairs drinking a couple of brewskis, whatever it might be. You got a good story out of it, right? That's all you need.
I FaceTime my daughters all the time when I'm doing pre and post for the Blues games just to show them where Daddy's at.
Sure.
And my oldest, Adelaide, still believes, she's like, Daddy's going to play hockey for the Blues tonight. So in my daughter's eyes, I'm playing in the Winter Classic later on tonight. Now, she doesn't have to know that for another 2 years. I could just tell her Daddy scored 3 goals.
That's right. All right. He's Alex Ferrario. He is broadcasting live from Wrigley Field, where the Blues will be taking on the Blackhawks later on this afternoon. You'll hear full pregame coverage, including an interview that Alex Ferrario has for you with Paul Stastny. That's coming up later on this afternoon, so stay tuned for that. Puck drop coming up at 4. We'll also be talking to Mike Rupp coming up at 1:30 to continue our preview of the Blues Winter Classic game. If you missed any of our conversation with Jeremy Rutherford or Scottie Upshall, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Coming up next, our college football playoff quick hitters, including Paul Feinbaum had some interesting comments on James Franklin and the importance of this game for him tonight against Boise State. What's it mean for James Franklin, and who's the coach with the most pressure on them going into this round? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Make your picks for this week's Fastlane Pick'em Challenge at 101ESPN.com. Show off your football knowledge and see if you can top the Fastlane and the dudes from the Rizzuto Show on the point. For this week's top score, it's the Fastlane and the Riz Show throwing down all football season long in the Pick'em Challenge. Enter your picks for this week right now at 101ESPN.com.
Refreshed by Bud Light, official beer sponsor of the NFL. Easy to Sunday, easy to enjoy.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my friends out at Classic Air Care, taking care of all of your HVAC needs. And look, when it comes to something as important as your air conditioner, your heater, especially this time of the year, where you know it's going to start getting colder and colder and colder, you need to make sure, one, that your unit is up and working, and two, you've got the right people taking care of it. And that's where Classic Air Care comes into play. And this is a company that I've been using since 2016 for our units, have had zero issues, and when issues have come up, you call them and it's fixed right away. They got a 4.8 rating up on Google reviews. There's over 2,500 reviews talking about their customer service, like this one from Andrea. Vince was the best, kind, knowledgeable, super helpful. So grateful that he volunteered to work this Sunday coming out to help us with our issues. I sincerely appreciate all of his help and assistance, setting me up on an affordable maintenance program so it won't cost an arm and a leg. Call Classic Air Care today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you. Ask about the maintenance agreement, or schedule online at classicaircare.com.
.101 ESPN has your chance to win a pair of tickets to the 65th Annual St. Louis Baseball Writers Dinner on Sunday evening, January 19th at the Missouri Athletic Club downtown, celebrating the top performers from last season and honoring the legacy of those who have made long-lasting contributions to the Cardinals organization. Tickets are on sale now for what will surely be a memorable night for St. Louis baseball fans. Get all the details and get entered to win that pair of tickets for the St. Louis Baseball Writers Dinner now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Powered by the Schaefer Door Company.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Everything. This would be just an unforgivable loss for a guy who has had a lot of unforgivable losses. Greeny, he usually beats the teams he's supposed to. Only last year, as a favorite, he lost to Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. But most of the time, when he's an underdog against the very best, you see it. He can't win. And not only can he not win, he loses badly. So a loss tonight would just cement that reputation.
That was Paul Feinbaum earlier today on ESPN talking about the spot that Penn State's in going into this game against Boise. Now, Boise's an 11.5-point underdog in what is effectively the Fiesta Bowl. It's a quarterfinal. It's quarterfinal in the playoff. That's what tonight is going to be between Penn State and Boise. Alex, I understand where he's coming from there. I mean, Penn State is a huge favorite. They should win this game. They're the better team going into this one. You shouldn't lose against Boise State. That being said, man, it's a playoff game. And Boise's had a few weeks off. Penn State had to play last week. Like, I don't know. I would take Boise State plus the points in this one. I don't think it's like oh man, James Franklin can't win the big one if he loses this game today against Boise. How much pressure do you think is on James Franklin and Penn State going into this game?
I'm totally with you, BK. I don't see how you put pressure on in a quarterfinal like this of college football playoffs. I understand it. You've got to get to the big game at some point. It's what we've been talking about with Ryan Day. But, man, as much fire has been under Ryan Day, I don't really feel like he's on the hot seat either, because you're taking on what a lot of people probably view as the national champion in Oregon. So it's so hard to look at a quarterfinal to where, yes, you've played, yes, another team's been off, but that being off, it's going to come down to kind of what the end score is. But if this is a close game and you lose, how can you blame the guy? Now, if you get completely blown out and this game's over in the first quarter, I can understand there being some frustration with James Franklin of how do you not have your team ready to go for a game like this. But, man, it's college football playoffs now. These are actually good teams going head-to-head.
Okay, so Ryan Day I feel differently about.
You really?
Yeah, James Franklin, if you lose in a close game tonight, like, Penn State fans are going to be mad, don't get me wrong. And the narrative will be, we can't win the big game. That's fine. I don't think it really changes anything about his job status. Like, James Franklin's going to be at Penn State for a long time if he wants to be at Penn State. He's done a really good job there. Ryan Day I feel differently about. Ryan Day has had a disastrous season, not because they were terrible or anything. They're in the college football playoff. They're in the second round right now. They're one of the best teams in the country. All of that's fine. They lost to Michigan, and that's a disaster for them. If they lose this game against Oregon, there's no saving that. Like, it's possible he gets fired, man. I don't think it's completely out of the realm that he gets fired. And if he doesn't, he will go into next season coaching for his job.
That's I agree with. I think the opportunity for him to get fired was that Tennessee game. Like, I think if you don't show up for that game, you get fired. I mean, if you go lose to Oregon in a tight football game, I don't see how you could get rid of the guy, because that's a team that I think everybody is viewing as the best. I mean, heck, they're the number one team. But I do agree that if you lose, you cannot start off poorly next year if you're Ryan Day, because you start off 3 or 4 games poorly, you're going to get fired quick.
Yeah, that's kind of why I view it a little bit differently. It's the job status. Like, what are the stakes here? Okay, so people are going to be mad at James Franklin. Cool. Does that actually matter, or is it just the public discourse? Ryan Day is like, dude, you might get fired after next season if you end up losing this game because of the way that things have gone for them. So the only way that he can get fans back on his side, and it's just to a certain degree. It's not like he's going to have this like long leash or anything, but the one way that he can win fans back over to a degree is by winning this game and then going on to win the national championship. It can't just be winning this game. It has to be he goes on to win the title to win fans back over. So to me, he's the one with the most pressure going into this round of the playoff. Alex, I find most of these games to be relatively intriguing, though. The first round, I kind of viewed it as like, I'm not sure we're going to get a single good game. I think the hope is we get a good game out of this round. This week, I feel differently. I think Penn State versus Boise should be fun tonight. I suppose it could be a blowout. Vegas doesn't expect it to be close. I think it's going to be pretty close. And you get Genty on one side of things, which is always a potential for an explosive play. The problem for Boise, just for what it's worth, they allow explosive plays at the highest rate of any team that is still remaining in this year's playoff. So, like, if Penn State gets a big play, it's not just that they get 15, 20 yards. Like 60-yard plays are regularly possible against this Boise State defense. So that's the concern going into this one. And if they can't get Genty going on the ground against Penn State's defense, boom, you got a real recipe for disaster for them. But, like, Oregon versus Ohio State has a chance to be the best game of this playoff. I have no idea what to expect in Notre Dame versus Georgia. Georgia's got its backup quarterback playing in this one. He might be better than the guy that had been starting for them all season long. We don't really know. I feel like I've seen 4 different versions of Georgia throughout the regular season. Notre Dame lost to bleeping Northern Illinois earlier this year, so I have no idea what to expect from them, but they've been playing really good football lately. I think this could be a really good round of the college football playoff. This is what the expansion was all about, was getting to this point.
Yeah, well, and like we talked about yesterday, like maybe the misstep by College Football Committee was making it 12 and not 8, because 8 you probably would have avoided a couple of those games from earlier. But still, I think the only bad game is Arizona State versus Texas.
Agreed.
Like, that's the only game that I just really don't care about. And you know what? If Arizona State makes it close, I'll turn it on at halftime. But all 3 of these other ones, BK, and I think a lot of people probably view Boise State kind of like Arizona State, to where it's like, man, Penn State is so good. but I think a lot of people are going to be sitting down and tuning in at the start to finish of these football games, specifically that Notre Dame-Georgia one. I know everybody's favorite is going to be Ohio State-Oregon, but, man, Georgia, I think, is so vulnerable with a backup quarterback. Notre Dame coming into this one. I don't trust Notre Dame, but I could absolutely see Georgia falling on their face without Carson Beck as their quarterback.
All right, one other thing that I wanted to get to here is the discussion that is taking place right now in certain circles of, hey, you need to play these games on campuses. I think the prices for these games right now would speak to that possibility. Like, there's just more money to be made for everybody. The get-in price right now, Fiesta Bowl $40, Sugar Bowl $33, Peach Bowl $16. Now the Rose Bowl $170. That's the game that's being played today between Oregon and Ohio State. People are excited about that game. They're willing to travel. There's going to be great attendance. Like, it should be a great environment for that one. For these others, though, I think these schools are asking a lot for fans to travel first for their championship game, their conference championship game. You've got that one first. And then the first round of the playoff, you've got at home. And then you're asking them to travel again 2 weeks after the conference championship game for many of these schools to go to the quarterfinal round and then the semifinal round and then the championship. That's a lot of money for people to spend, to go to separate places, to then pay for your hotel, pay for the tickets to go to that game, pay for everything you're doing in the city for that week leading up to it. And frankly, if I'm a fan of a lot of these teams, I would just rather wait for the semifinal or the national championship game as opposed to spending that money for the quarterfinal. I don't know how you get out of these, because a part of the buy-in from the bowls to be able to get these dates available was for the games to be played at those respective bowls. So I don't know that they're going to be able to get out of it, but I do think it would be a better environment. I think it would be more enjoyable as a viewer and better for fans, honestly, and potentially even better for the schools if you had these not tied into bowls and instead played at, like, a game played at Arizona State, Oregon, Georgia, and Boise this week. Yeah. I think that would be better for college football. I don't know how you do it, though. How do you feel about this one, Alex?
I'm the same way. I think the only neutral site game should be the college football championship game. I think everything else should be the home field, because I want the environment to drag more viewers in, because there's no doubt, like, if you knew Georgia and Notre Dame were going head-to-head, you're watching that, not because you're excited about the game, of course, but, man, think of what those environments are going to be, and you're going to have more people wanting to travel, more people want to go. I just feel like neutral site football games, especially in the playoffs, they lose their luster of just that playoff environment and atmosphere. So I think the only one that should be neutral site is the college football championship.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to do it for the semifinal as well. Like, you need at least 3 games, basically, to be at bowl game tie-ins. But, man, I do not think they'll do it. It's not something I think college football will actually explore. But if there were 2 things that you could do to change this moving forward, one would be you don't actually give the 4 highest-ranked conference champions that bye. That could be something they change. You just seed it based on where the rankings are, and then the 4 highest-ranked teams get the bye, and then the 4 teams, all of the conference champions, get an automatic berth, and that is their quote-unquote win to get in.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be for this round to be also played at their host sites. I think Boise has a lot of pressure on it tonight, and for the first thing that I mentioned, of the 4 highest-ranked conference champions getting that bye week. If they end up losing this game and getting blown out, that will be the first thing that changes next year. The first thing that would change is, okay, it's time for us to make this switch. You don't get a bye week and that home game, or basically the bye week, and then get to be called the home team on these host sites just because you won your conference. That'll be the first thing that changes, but I think a lot of that comes down to Boise going into tonight. Arizona State was a unique situation there, but Boise's the one that I would point to that has the most pressure on them because of it.
Yep. I think they should try and find a way to change it. Like you said, though, it's going to be hard to get out of something like this because of the bowl game tie-ins, and obviously money talks. But I just think college football sees more success if you put it at neutral, or you put it at the home school in terms of the fans, the environment, and the viewership.
All right, he's Alex Ferrario. He's broadcasting live from Wrigley Field, where the Blues will be taking on the Blackhawks later on this afternoon. We'll have pregame coverage for that one starting after our show at 2 o'clock. Alex going to have a conversation with Paul Stastny that you'll be able to hear right here starting at 2 o'clock. Puck drop for Blues versus Blackhawks at 4. That's all right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. We'll talk to Mike Rupp of NHL Network, continuing to preview that game at 1:30. But next, It sounds like it might be an either-or for the Cardinals this offseason for trading 2 players. We'll tell you who those are next year on 101 ESPN.
It's time for another moment in Blues history.
On this day back in 2007, the Blues would blank the Detroit Red Wings on New Year's Eve. A 2-0 victory for St. Louis as the Blues would stop all 31 shots from Detroit. Manny Legacy, the former Red Wing, in between the pipes and scoring goals for St. Louis. Eric Johnson, his 3rd goal of the season, and Lee Stempniak would score an empty net goal late in the 3rd to cap off a Blues shutout winner.
This date in Blues history was powered by Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. For all your HVAC needs, ClassicAirCare.com.
This is Justin Falk, and it's game day on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN.
Blues Game Day is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, the ultimate arena for wings and wins. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
New Year's Eve belongs to Note and Hawks. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Today at Wrigley Field, struggling Chicago craves a reset. Winter Classic style versus St. Louis. Stay right here for the 4 p.m. puck drop. Anders Sorensen's team has lost 4 straight while Jim Montgomery's Blues just went down against Buffalo. College football, Mizzou finishes its season emphatically, defeating Iowa 27-24. Brady Cook was named Music City Bowl MVP. Jared Goff enjoyed similar success, 300-plus yards passing, as Detroit held off San Francisco 40-34. Professionally speaking, the Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
I'm reading this from Katie Woo's piece over at The Athletic. Quote, if the Cardinals are unable to find a trade partner or remain unwilling to eat more of Nolan Arenado's salary, they are prepared to pivot to trading away some of their starting pitchers. This is not the route that they prefer, as St. Louis would like to hold on to Eric Fedde until at least the trade deadline. Still, the Cardinals will continue to monitor interest levels in both Fedde and Steven Matz, 2 pitchers that are heading into next season on expiring deals. The Cardinals could also move Matz, owed $12.5 million in 2025, even if they do trade Nolan Arenado, end quote. Again, that comes from Katie Woo over at The Athletic. Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That makes it sound as if the Cardinals are viewing it as an either-or proposition in regards to trading Nolan Arenado or Eric Fedde. And I don't like that. I don't like that framing of the equation. I don't think this needs to be an either-or. I think it can be an and conversation, where you trade Nolan Arenado and Eric Fedde to maximize the value this offseason. I don't know if the Cardinals are going to be able to find a suitor for Arenado, but I think that should have no influence whatsoever on their thoughts on keeping Eric Fedde. I'm not sure, honestly, why the two are combined. I think they're viewing it as, well, if they don't trade Arenado, we're going to have to move a little bit more money, and that would mean moving Eric Fedde potentially. I also wonder what that would mean for Ryan Helsley. If they are that desperate to get money off of the books and you want to get something similar to trading Nolan Arenado, that would be Eric Fedde and Ryan Helsley potentially getting off of the books going next year. So that's another conversation. What do you make of this framing, Alex? The either-or proposition, trading Arenado or Eric Fedde?
I mean, it tells me that they're obviously in need to slash the money like we've talked about. But, I mean, I think it part of it tells me I think the Cardinals are actually coming to the understanding like they're not going to be able to move Nolan Arenado, so they have to start looking at other avenues, because you don't start thinking about this unless you believe that, nope, Nolan Arenado's not going anywhere because he's not willing to budge, nor are we with the money. I'm with you, though. Like, I don't understand at what point this has become an either-or situation, because I understand the thought process of wanting to keep an Eric Fedde because, look, he's cheap. He's going to help us at least be somewhat competitive next year. But the whole thought process with all of this is, 1, getting opportunities for younger players, and 2, slashing payroll as much as possible. So why wouldn't you put in an $8 million player in Eric Fedde who could get you a valuable return in terms of readjusting your minor league system on top of moving on from this salary that Nolan Arenado is required? It kind of solidifies once again that the Cardinals just don't have that creativity bone in them. Like, this is something that I really feel like you can have some creativity opportunities to maybe package a Fedde or package a Steven Matz with something to bring in a valuable return and also give playing time, but they see this only one-sided to where, well, we have to slash $30+ million, and it's either Nolan Arenado or we're moving on from Fedde and Matz and then whomever else.
I just don't get it, man. I really don't. And I've mentioned this a few different times. I think it's fine if they keep Ryan Helsley. In fact, I think it's smart to keep Helsley and then trade him at the deadline. I think it maximizes your return there. And I think that should be the priority on all of these moves. What helps us maximize the return that we are going to get for the asset that we currently have? If they are in currently a reset mode, Well, that's the way you should be handling these things. And for Arenado, it's very simple. You got to trade him this offseason if such a move presents itself. Like you have to do that for the opportunities for young players, for the money situation. Like everything about that makes sense.
Yeah.
Fedde is where things get really interesting for them. And it's where my brain kind of breaks, Alex, for what this team is trying to accomplish in 2025. The one scenario where I suppose it makes sense to keep him is if they truly believe they're going to be better than people are expecting from the outside looking in. It's the only scenario, because if you have Eric Fedde and you're better than people think, okay, well, Fedde is a really important key cog to making that team a potential playoff contender. So, okay, sure, that part makes sense to me. But other than that, I can't think of a scenario where it makes sense to keep him. He's $7 million. Teams don't have to give up, the pitchers that are remaining for the most part are either not very good or attached to a qualifying offer. The one exception being Jack Flaherty, who has serious injury questions, and people are hesitant to give him the 5-year deal. So the natural pivot is to a guy like Eric Fedde, who is good, cheap, cost controlled. You can give him the QO after next season if you're another team. Right. So you either keep him for another year, $20 million if you're a big market club, or he declines it, and you end up getting a draft pick compensation there. Like, this is the time to cash in on this trade chip. You got this crown jewel at the deadline, and all you had to give up was a player that wasn't a part of your future plans with Tommy Edman. And now is the time to cash in on that chip. I do not understand why or how this should be combined to Arenado's future here in St. Louis. Doesn't make sense to me.
And this is why, BK, I brought it up, I think a couple of weeks ago with the three of us, to where a little bit of my concern is that the Cardinals are a little on the side of like, well, the NL Central's not going to be very good, so maybe we have an opportunity to at least stay somewhat competitive, so why not keep some of these assets like an Eric Fedde, like a Ryan Helsley, and that was under the impression of getting rid of Nolan Arenado. And now when they realize that they're stuck with Arenado, I'm worried that they're still going to view this as like, well, what if we only cut a little bit here? Like, you're limiting what the whole goal of this season was supposed to be because of this little dangling fruit in front of you of it's like, well, the NL Central's not very good. Maybe we can win it this year, even with the Cubs getting Kyle Tucker, where this really should be, hey, we are resetting this. We're refreshing this, whatever word they're using. Yep. And you know how you do this? We get rid of all of the assets that are not a part of our long-term future. Fedde, Matz, Helsley, Arenado, and now they're pulling back on that rope because there's that potential of being good.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Guys, they're not getting some amazing return for Fedde. That's why they're not trading him. Maybe you'll get a club's prospect ranked in the 25 to 30 range. Otherwise, you're just not getting a lot for him. Wholeheartedly disagree. Now, you can take this or leave it. It's a nerdy number, but there's a site that puts out, like, it's called surplus value, right? So basically, how much are you paid? How much value are you expecting to extract? And how many years of control do you have? But to sum it all up, like, how much value do you have on the trade market? It's a site that I like to use. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's pretty good, and it's at least directionally kind of in the range of what you'd expect in return. Guys on the Cardinals that have similar trade value to Eric Fedde, just so that way we can use their own systems. That way people here in St. Louis are familiar with the names that I'm about to mention. Guys below Fedde on that list of value to other organizations, trade value. Tink Hence, Thomas Sajaci, Alec Burleson, Victor Scott, Ryan Helsley, Michael McGreevy, Nolan Gorman, Cooper Jerpy, Ryan Fernandez, like TK Roby. He has a lot of trade value, man. I think people are underestimating the kind of trade value that Eric Fedde has. In fact, according to this site, it's only one place. He has similar trade value to Jordan Walker right now.
Wow.
So, like, I don't know that teams would actually view it that way out there. Maybe somebody's holding out hope. They view Jordan Walker as a potential superstar still. They think they can unlock something, and they're willing to give up a little bit more. That's not there with Fedde. Fedde is what he is. He's the number 3 starter for a decent contender. But the reason why you trade him now is because that's the way he's currently viewed. And if he comes back next year and has a little bit of a downgrade compared to what it was last year, we saw this with Miles Michaelis. Year 1, really good coming from overseas. Year 2, the league adjusted to him a bit. Still a good starter, but not to the same degree that he was in year 1. That's in the range of outcomes for Eric Fedde next year as well. If you trade him at the deadline, the team that acquires him cannot give him the qualifying offer. He's ineligible for that. If you trade him now, the team that acquires him can get that qualifying offer for him. So everything to me points to you got to trade Fedde now unless you genuinely in your heart of hearts believe you're going to be good next year. It's the only scenario where it makes sense to keep him, and it brings me back to I think the Cardinals believe this team's going to be pretty good, man. I don't know if they're right on that, and it does feel a little bit like you're selling yourself something, a bag of goods, but that's the one scenario where it makes sense to me, man.
Which, if you are, great, but color me skeptical, which I think a lot of people know. And if that's the case and you're not, BK, you screwed up. You screwed up because then the assets that you were hoping to get returns on, they're not going to be there because Eric Fedde's not going to get you anything. Even if you don't believe he's going to get you a lot now, he's not getting you anything next year if you try and go into that because, frankly, he's a free agent. You have to QO him. You're not getting anything for Ryan Helsley if you go beyond the trade deadline and don't trade him or an injury pops up. You're not getting anything for Steven Matz. Like, this is why you need to pounce if you're trying to reset things, reset the pipeline, bring in a lot of players, try and find these cost-controlled young studs. You need to start moving on from these pieces. And if you're going to try and fool yourself because the NL Central doesn't look as dangerous as you thought, well, you just did that last year. And what happened? The Milwaukee Brewers put up 90-plus wins. And I'm very skeptical that this team can be competitive if they say, well, we're better than we originally thought.
All right, last thing here, Alex. In the spirit of the new year, everybody's going to be doing this hokey stuff over the next few days, right?
Favorite memory of 2024, BK.
Nope.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Okay.
This year, I feel like the two Cardinals that swung their opinion of them the most in the year 2024, from where we were on January 1st to where we are today on December 31st. I think the two Cardinals, to me, that swung their opinion of them the most, and in a positive direction at least, were Mason Wynn and Andre Palante. Those would be my two nominees.
Okay.
I think those are the guys. Maybe you can include Ryan Fernandez in this conversation. He went from an afterthought to a guy that could legitimately close out games for you next year, depending on what happens with Ryan Helsley. So you could throw him into this mix as well. But those would be my two nominees. Alex, if you had to project for 2025, who do you think will fit into that criteria of the Cardinal that swings their status the most from where we currently view them to where we will view them at this point next year?
Thomas Ajayci and Quinn Matthews. Those are the two. I thought about Ivan Herrera, but I think all of us are on the same page with Ivan Herrera. It's just a matter of playing time with him. But Thomas Ajayci, mostly because I think Thomas Ajayci is going to fall in line with this is the next big mid-infielder, wherever you decide to plug him in that provides offensive upside. His Arizona Fall League numbers were better than what Mason Wynn and Jordan Walker put together. So he's one, and then I think Quinn Matthews, because the stock has risen, but I think it's going to rise even further this year if you get to see a little bit of Major League Baseball.
Love the Quinn Matthews call. I think that's one that we could for sure have in this conversation. He's already viewed pretty highly among Cardinals fans, but if he comes up and puts together like a mid-3s ERA and looks the part of a strikeout artist, like that could be.
Now you found your number two.
Yeah, he could be the best Cardinals pitcher that they have developed internally since Jack Flaherty. That's in his range of outcomes. The guys for me, I've got two hitters. One of them you mentioned, which is Ivan Herrera. I've mentioned, hey, what if this guy's just a 300 hitter? Because so far in his major league career, when he's been up, he's been a 298 hitter. Pretty damn good so far in his major league career. He's been 25% above league average offensively. He's just got to fix the defense. And even if that means, hey, he's a DH more often than not, fine. He can be Wilson Contreras. Like, that's totally cool by my eyes. So he's one guy that I think will really change our outlook on him moving forward. The other one is Jordan Walker. Yeah. I think we will leave the 2025 calendar year saying Jordan Walker might never reach the true superstar status that we thought he had in him. But Jordan Walker's going to be a damn good baseball player for the next 10 years in a Cardinals uniform. 270, 280 hitter, 20 to 25 home run power, decent on the bases, average to above average defense. I think he's going to be a very good player for the Cardinals next year. And even if that doesn't mean superstar, I think Cardinals fans are going to leave next year feeling like, all right, we got a pretty good one in Jordan Walker. And I think he's the one that changes our outlook on him the most with what he does in the calendar year 2025.
Could you be swayed on Nolan Gorman?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if he hits 35 home runs, I think the problem for Gorman is always going to be he's always going to strike out a ton.
And that's why I wasn't sure.
In this market, hell, really, any market, that's just something that's hard to overcome, man. I'm not sure that he's ever going to be somebody that Cardinals fans are just falling in love with. Like, if he becomes Jock Peterson, that's a really good outcome for him. He becomes an excellent excellent contributor for a contending club. And he's still never going to be one of the key components. Like, he'll never be a top 2 or 3 hitter on a winning contending club with that kind of profile. So I think he can change our minds on what he's going to be, but what is that? It's a good player.
I'm with you there.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. Alex is broadcasting live for us today out at Wrigley Field, where the Blues are going to be taking on the Blackhawks, the Battlehawks. The Blackhawks coming up at 4 o'clock. We'll have an extended pregame show for you with Alex Ferrario. That begins at 2 o'clock. You'll hear from Paul Stastny. He's got a bunch of interviews that he's put together. It's going to be a really cool show. So that begins at 2 o'clock right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. We'll talk to Mike Rupp, former NHL forward, now with NHL Network. He joins us at 1:30 to preview the Winter Classic. But coming up next, time for the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. And every month during the season, you can register to win tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Enter to score free Blues tickets now at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 app. Brought to you by Ted Cruz, serving original frozen custard since 1929. Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. So let's get into the Junk Drawer. Alex, I want to have a conversation about movies today because we're getting into the final day of the 2024 calendar year, which means all of the movies for 2024 have been released. Quick question for you.
Okay.
You can take this in either direction. What was the best or most memorable movie that you saw in 2024?
Oh, geez, you're asking. Oh, I know. People are going to hate me for this because there's probably like Oscar winners. Deadpool and Wolverine.
There you go.
As an easy pick for me. Like, I had been anticipating that for the longest time as, one, a comic book nerd, but two, just a lover of Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds. But I was anticipating that movie forever, and I think it lived up to expectations. So, again, not an Oscars film, but still a movie that I thought was the best that I saw. Yeah, absolutely.
Mine was Dune Part 2. It was both an
Okay.
Oscar-nominated film and also one that was, relevant for pop culture, and then certainly had a massive box office as well. But
yeah,
that would be really the only one that I can think of that fits into this criteria for me. It was I was having a conversation about this with a buddy yesterday because he brought up, he asked me the question like, hey, what will you remember? Which movie will you remember 2024 for? And for me, it's almost exclusively Dune Part 2. And I can say this about television shows as well. I don't think it was a particularly memorable year for just films, TV in general. And he was saying he thinks it's because of the writer's strike. He thinks that was a big part of it. And 2025 is expected to be a better year from that regard. It just was not a very good year for movies.
No, it really wasn't. And I mean, a lot of it is because of all the remakes that you're doing and things like that. But like, it started to get better because Moana 2, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's incredible.
Really disappointing reviews.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I've heard it was incredible, but mine are like kids of like, or parents of like 4 and 5 year olds. And then Wicked, of course, is a one that like everybody's talking so much about. But I mean, think about the top grossing films. Godzilla versus Kong. Like, I didn't even know they made another one of those. Kung Fu Panda, Twisters, which I thought was terrible, Beetlejuice, which wasn't any good. So, like, you really haven't had any interesting films. They've all been sequels or remakes, and I just think people are mentally checked out of those. They want original films.
Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, another Beetlejuice, Twisters, a remake, Bad Boys, Ride or Die. Like, yeah, it's just...
That one was good.
Gladiator 2, I even thought was like, it was fine. It was fine. Yeah. Didn't do a lot for me. Like, it hit all the right notes. It was if you were just looking to have a good time at the movies for a couple hours, it was good.
Joker 2 was a bomb, and that was supposed to have been a big event movie.
I was talking, I think it was Holloway that I was talking to the other day about Gladiator 2, and he thought it was awesome, and I was like, man, I didn't get that same vibe. Like, it was fine.
I thought it was good. And that's as far as I'm willing to go with it. It was a fun, like, for me, Top Gun, the new one, Top Gun Maverick, I thought was excellent. I thought that was as good as you could do with like a sequel, having a few nods to the original, but then also kind of making it a new version of what the original was. Like
Legacy sequel.
Yeah. I thought they did a really good job with that. I didn't feel necessarily the same way about what we saw from Gladiator 2. I thought it was just like okay. Yeah, it was fun.
That's kind of how I was. I was like, I mean, I love Denzel Washington, which was like, that part was great, but I kind of saw it and I was like, did I really need this? No. Like, I was fine with the first Gladiator and moving on, but that's what films are now, and it really sucks that all it is like, well, we can't come up with anything else creative, so let's just make a sequel to a movie that really didn't need one.
We've had a couple of people on the text line bring up Barbie and Oppenheimer. I think those were technically 2023.
They were.
If I'm not mistaken. So those would have been a part of, like, for the Oscars nominations, for example, those would have been a part of last year's nominees.
Correct.
This year, here are the nominees, just to give you an idea. Here are the nominees for Best Picture for the Oscars.
Everybody
Anora.
snap.
I'm not familiar with that movie. Anora?
No.
The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez. That's one I have not seen. I've heard good things about it. A Real Pain, Sing Sing, The Substance, and then Wicked, as you mentioned earlier, Alex.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a blockbuster film in order to be a good movie. I want to say that on the front end. There are a lot of really good films that end up getting notoriety because of the Oscars, because of the nominees that they end up getting, and then a lot of people will go back and watch them after the fact. But yeah, I think there's like 2 legit, like, big movies that were revealed in the theaters that people like wanted to go to, that became event type of viewings, and it's just Dune Part 2 and Wicked that are a part of this year's Oscar nominees. So it was an underwhelming year for movies, in my opinion. And again, I could say the same thing about TV shows. Like, what was the best new TV show that you saw this year? I think for me, it was probably like The Perfect Couple, which was on Netflix. It was good, but it was just your classic whodunit film that was remade off of a book. So it's not like an original screenplay or anything.
Right. I don't even think I couldn't tell you the last time a new TV show came out that I gravitated towards. Like, I always watch like TV shows that are like 2 or 3 years post-release so that you can watch it all. And it's mostly because somebody tells me how great it is. I don't hear anybody being like, oh, you need to check out this new TV show that's coming out. Where like in the past, and this is going to make me sound like the old get off my lawn guy, but in the past I remember like seeing TV shows that would be like coming this fall, and I would watch it every single week to stay on top of.
Somebody on the text line brought up Penguin. I've heard good things about it. I have not seen it myself yet, but I have heard good things about that one. So that might be the one that I'm not including in here that I need to get on. All right, he's Alex Ferrario. That's Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up at 1:30, we'll be joined by Mike Rupp, former NHL forward, now with the NHL Network. He's going to help us preview the Blues versus the Blackhawks later on this afternoon. They will be taking the ice at Wrigley Field, where Alex Ferrario is broadcasting live today for this year's Winter Classic. But coming up next, Alex brought up a point earlier today about the Blues and the importance of this game. It goes beyond just the pageantry. This is a really important game for the Blues when it comes to the standings, and he'll explain why coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN's Blues Fan of the Week.
Shout out to Doug DeLeo of St. Peters, Missouri. He was named our new 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week.
Submit your pick now to be the next 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week and take home a pair of tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Learn more at 101ESPN.com. WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Beating bad teams on your schedule is a good way to be able to get back into the playoff mix. With Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. The Blues have an opportunity to do one of those, or to win one of those games later on this afternoon. They're playing against the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks are in last place in the Western Conference. They have 26 points in 37 games so far on this season. Alex, the Blues just lost a game the other night against Buffalo. They have 32 points, and they're at the bottom of their division in the standings right now. You can't keep racking up these kinds of losses against the poor teams on your schedule, and that brings up the importance of today's game. It goes beyond just the pageantry of playing at Wrigley Field. It's going to be an unbelievable setting. It's going to be picturesque. It's going to be something that if you're going to the game, if you're listening to us right now and you're on your way up to Chicago, it will be an incredible experience regardless of result. It'd be a hell of a lot better if the Blues are able to come out with a victory. And for them in the standings, Alex, that is where this game gets its importance. What about this game stands out to you from that perspective?
So before I answer that, BK, I think we have this cut of Eddie Olczyk. So I interviewed Eddie Olczyk, who, of course, the TNT broadcaster. He's going to be on the call. I think this is like his 13th Winter Classic game. But also, he's the broadcaster for the Seattle Kraken, so very familiar with the Western Conference. And you'll hear the full interview coming up in our 2 to 3 o'clock preview show. But I asked him about the Blues being a bubble playoff team, and this is what he had to respond with.
You have to limit the damage when it's not going well. Like, you can't go 7-8 games without getting a win. Like, you just can't. Like, the West is – but the one thing I will say about the West is that if you give yourself a chance, may not be division, but you know what? I think that there's a few – there are probably 5 or 6 teams, and I think the Blues are one of them, that if they can get on one of those runs the opposite way, Alex, of what I said earlier – is that all of a sudden you could be battling for a playoff spot. So I think they're definitely a bubble team.
This team has yet to win 3 in a row, BK. They've had 6 opportunities to do so, and they've yet to accomplish that. In their last 6, they've lost 4 times. You can't afford to lose this game. One, it's a bottom dweller in the Western Conference, and if you're a playoff team, you have to beat these teams. But like Eddie Olczyk said, you can't go into a rut in the Western Conference, because if you do so, you fall further and further out of it, which means you need a bigger winning streak, which, I mean, we saw an 11-game win streak. That was unheard of, and the Blues did that in 2019, and I don't think they've got that in them. So to win this one, it's not a winning streak. All you're doing is you're coming back and responding from the Buffalo Sabres loss, but it sets you up to have some success beyond that, because then it's Ottawa, Columbus, Minnesota, Anaheim, Columbus, and then 2 against Calgary. This is the type of game that I think the Blues can't afford to have a loss in their column. Even if it's the Winter Classic and it's the big showcase for the Chicago Blackhawks, this is one that the Blues have to walk out with and say, we got a W and can start to build another win streak.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what they've done so far this year. Like, you lost a game already earlier this season to Montreal. You lost 2 games. You got a point, but lost 2 games against Buffalo already on your schedule. You look at what you've done so far this year in the Western Conference. There have been some struggles, especially with the loss against San Jose earlier this year. So you're giving up these points that other teams in your division, in your conference, are able to rack up. You add those up at the end of the season. Alex, how many times did we have conversations last year about, hey, you lose that game against San Jose? What was it? Columbus. Right before that break, you lost that one. You gave up those points.
Lost
Over
to Nashville,
time,
too.
these start to add up. And so you can't have multiple of them that rack up over the course of 1 week. You got to be able to take care of business. And the ice conditions probably aren't going to be great today. Chances are there's going to be moments where there's just a bad puck bounce that ends up going in your own net. You got to be able to find a way to overcome this, man. This is not a very good Chicago team. Most teams are able to take advantage of them. They basically have like 1 or 2 guys that you have to worry about on the ice at any given time. So I expect the Blues to take care of business. We know Benner, like, for all of his faults, and there are some during the regular season, especially during the month of December, which we're technically still in, he's a guy that shows up in big games.
He does.
And when you have moments like these where it's a spotlight and you get a little notoriety from it, like, I expect Benner to have a really good day today. And if he doesn't, that would be the surprise to me. So I think the Blues are going to win. I think Benner has a big day. I mentioned earlier, I think Dylan Holloway's going to have a big one in this one. I love JR's answer, too. He thinks Robert Thomas is going to go out there and have a huge day for the Blues. He's a guy that Like, this should be the type of showcase that he deserves. So I think they're going to have a really big day today, and I think they end up winning this one like 4-1. I think that's what we end up seeing.
Well, and if you remember correctly, BK, like Binnington in that game against the Minnesota Wild, he played well. 4 goals went in because those conditions were just wild, and that's what JR mentioned. It's so hard because on the sheet you might see a 6-5 final score, and you might be like, man, what the hell? But this is going to be an odd type of game. Like, it's stopped raining. It's supposed to kind of turn into like a snowy mix by the time you hit puck drop, but who knows what the conditions are going to be. But I'm with you. These are the types of games that your stars have to show up in. These aren't the games that you rely on your fourth liners. Those games you rely on your fourth liners when you're playing back-to-backs, when your team's fatigued, and you need a guy who plays 8 minutes a night to step up in 10 or 12 minutes. This is the game, though, that you look towards your top 2 lines, your top defenseman, your goaltender to find a way to pull out a victory for you. And look, Chicago's going to be hungry. They've lost 4 in a row, and they're playing on home ice in Wrigley Field. So you're going to have to avoid finding yourself being down in the first period, because playing catch-up hockey with this type of conditions is not going to be easy. Take the crowd out of it early, and then let Jordan Binnington put on his show.
They're 4-11 in their last 15 games. This is not a very good
They got the new coach bump
that you're going up against. All right.
No,
he's Alex
not.
Ferrario. That is Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN for just another 45 minutes or so. Coming up at 2 o'clock, Alex is going to have an extended version of pregame coverage for you for this year's Winter Classic. Blues versus Battlehawks. The Blues versus the Blackhawks. Puck drop for this at 4 o'clock. I am done saying this. Otherwise, I'm going to continue screwing it up. We'll have Mike Rupp to help us continue previewing this game at 1:30. But coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It here on 101 ESPN.
Listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up with all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 app, driven by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Vegas sets them up, and we're here to make the call. It's BK and Ferrario's Bet It or Forget It on 101 ESPN.
Presented by Circus Sports Illinois. Sports betting the way it should be.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. Alex, Bet It or Forget It, you would make a bet of the Chiefs and the Packers to win their respective conferences. Parlay that together for $200. A $10 bet wins you $200 for the Chiefs to play the Packers in the Super Bowl. Bet it or forget it. That's good value.
Great value, but forget it. I would do it. I put like 7 more of those parlays in there. Like, come on, man. A Ferrario parlay isn't a good parlay until there's at least 8 in there. Like, the payout's got to be $5,000 if Ferrario's doing a parlay.
That's hilarious.
But I know what you're going after there, and I will forget it. I don't think the Packers are going to be there. As much as I know you love Jordan Love, and I'm with you, like, they've been a fun team, I still think after watching the Lions again with the 49ers, and I know the 49ers don't have a great defense, I think the Lions are going to be able to put up points. I think I would have the Lions or the Eagles before I would have the Packers in the Super Bowl.
I left last night's game feeling worse about the Lions than I have at any point this season. I know that sounds crazy because they won the game 40-34. The offense was unbelievable. Jared Goff looked great. Jahmyr Gibbs looks amazing as the big play late. All of that, totally fair. There are reasonable minds that can disagree with me on this. I don't think you can continue winning that way. Now, I say this as somebody that watched the 2018 Chiefs lose to the Patriots in the postseason. And that 2018 Chiefs offense is as good as any that I've seen basically since the greatest show on turf. Like, greatest show on turf, 07 Patriots, 2018 Chiefs for me over the last 25 years. Those are the creme de la creme. Lions are probably up there right below that tier of offenses for me. That defense is so bad right now, and they have so many concerns on it. I left that game last night when they gave up 34 to the 49ers, who have been bad recently. I don't think you can win that way long-term in the postseason. Maybe they get to the Super Bowl because maybe there's no other complete team in the playoffs that can shut them down and take advantage of it. But I think if they get to the Super Bowl and they're playing against one of the Chiefs, the Ravens, or the Bills, I don't think they can beat them this way.
BK, you have given up 1,416 yards over the last 3 games combined. It's not a sustainable model, Alex.
No, it's not, but I think the only way they're going to win, if they win, is by putting up points. And
totally.
That's where I do think they can do that. It's just going to be a matter of how do they look against some really good defenses, because San Francisco's isn't that.
You,
all right, boys.
You know where I stand on this. I'm definitely betting this. I'm putting it down over on the Circus Sports app in the state of Illinois. $10 wager wins you $200. Chiefs, Packers in the Super Bowl. It's going to be great.
Just do me a favor, BK. Put 8 more legs on there and try and bring in some good money rather than just some okay money.
What do you got for us?
Guys, bet it or forget it. By the end of the first period tonight, we will see 4 goals.
Into the first period? Yeah, I'm going to forget it. I know the ice conditions won't be great, but I think that's more of a, like, the later you get into the game, the more the ice conditions start to deteriorate. So I'll forget this. I think you see 2 goals in the first period.
There were 6 goals scored in the second period between the Blues and the Minnesota Wild. I'm wondering if this one starts really early in the first period. I'm betting this, by the way.
Wow.
I will bet it that we see 4 goals in a single period today, but not in the first. The ice conditions, the conditions out there will get worse in the second and third, so give me the second or third, but not the opening stanza.
Bradford, what do you have for us today?
Absolutely, guys. Alabama's still trailing Michigan by 6 as that third quarter rolls onward in the Relia Quest Bowl. Now, unlike Cam Ward, though, Jalen Milroe didn't quit at halftime, so you never know. Maybe there's a chance of the comeback for the Crimson Tide, but bet it or forget it. For 2025, it is going to be the second and final season for Kalen DeBoer in Tuscaloosa.
I'll forget it. He's not going to get fired. I know fans are not happy with him because he went 9-3. Woe is me. Poor Alabama. I think this is going to take some time. Kalen DeBoer is a really good football coach. He has won everywhere that he has gone, and didn't go the way that he expected this year. If he loses against next year's equivalent of Vandy and Oklahoma, yeah, it's going to be a problem for him. I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to have a better team next year, potentially go 10-2, something like that. So I'll forget this. I do not think he's gone after next season.
Yeah, I'm with BK. I forget this. I don't think you're going to fire him that quick. Maybe the year after, if they're still struggling, I could see it, but I don't think it goes 2 years and then the guy's out.
I will be curious to see who their quarterback is, see what the quarterback situation looks like. I don't think it's going to be Jalen Milroe, whether he ends up transferring or going to the NFL draft. My guess is transfer. I think you're going to see a couple of quarterbacks from this year's college football playoff that end up in the portal and are starting at other schools next year. Milroe could be one. Quinn Ewers another. I wonder if one of them ends up at Oregon and is the starting quarterback at Oregon next year.
Despite the uncertainty at QB, do they get back into the CFP mix next fall?
Probably. I mean, it's Alabama.
Yeah,
it's a pretty strong bet that. Don't bet against them getting to the college football playoff in multiple seasons in a row. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. Alex, let's get to this from the 314. Bet It or Forget It. Dylan Holloway will score at least 35 goals this season. 35-plus goals this year. Bet It or Forget It.
35 is a lofty number. If you would have said 30, I would have said bet it, but I'm going to say forget it with 35 because we've seen already a little bit, like he's gone through a little bit of a scoring slump, 6-7 games without a goal. He's at, 12 now, 11 now on the season? That's going to be tough to get to 35, so I'm going to say forget it.
I'm going to forget it as well. I think he gets right around 30. 30 feels good, and that'd be a massive success for the Bulls.
Hell of a season. Yeah.
Better to forget it. Illinois will win by at least 7 over South Carolina today. I'll tell you this, I'm forgetting that. I think South Carolina wins that game.
Did you just say that because T-Bone's not here and you hate T-Bone?
No, I'm saying that because they haven't gone up against anybody like Sellers as a quarterback this year. Ooh. Sellers is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and I think it's going to be really tough. And they don't have their best wide receiver in this game. So you combine those two things, I think South Carolina, I think they're rolling this one. I think they win by 14.
I am betting this one with you, or forgetting this one with you. I think South Carolina wins this one in an easy cover for them.
When this matchup first came out, I looked at it as a total mismatch for Illinois. I still feel the same way. Get ready for 2025. Altmaier, another year there at the controls. But South Carolina, too physical, as you said, BK. They just simply haven't had a matchup, Illinois, that is, anything like South Carolina this year. And Sellers next year, another year under his belt. It's going to be fun and scary to watch in the SEC.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Last one here, guys. Bet it or forget it, the Bengals will end up in the postseason.
I'm going to forget this one. They need too many things to happen for them to get in. I'm going to bet this one. The Chiefs basically control the Bengals' destiny, so I'm going to bet this one.
Yeah, the Broncos are not going to lose to Carson Wentz and the Chiefs backups on Sunday. So
Carson Wentz is a Super Bowl champion, sir.
I get why this has become such a massive story. It's like the only interesting storyline going into this weekend. That's it. It's can Joe Burrow bring the Bengals back and get them into the playoffs after such a disastrous start to the season? That's much more interesting than the Falcons versus the Bucs, both of whom are going to lose in that first round playoff game anyways. So I get why it's a story. I do not think it's going to happen. I also think even if they did, like, people are saying that the Chiefs are going to be afraid of the Bengals, right? The only way that the Chiefs would play the Bengals is if they beat the Bills in the postseason. They would have to beat the Bills in the first round. And guess what? I would much rather play Cincinnati than Buffalo.
Good luck.
So no, I'm not afraid of Cincinnati. I just don't think that they're going to end up being able to get into the postseason, so I'm going to forget this. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to get into the BK and Ferrario Rewind, putting our finishing touches on today's show as we lead into Blues versus Blackhawks Winter Classic pregame coverage starting at 2 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, who is broadcasting live today from Wrigley Field. But coming up next, we're going to continue previewing this game with Mike Rupp, former NHL forward, now with the NHL Network. We'll get his thoughts on Blues versus Blackhawks next here on BK and Ferrario.
This is Nick Letty, and today is Blues Game Day on 101 ESPN.
Blues Game Day is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, the ultimate arena for wings and wins. Lane home weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. with Anthony Stalter, Jamie Rivers, and Gary Davis on 101 ESPN. 2 former pros and 1 average Joe. The Fast Lane is driven by Scrap Mart Metals Recycling. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Second City gets first ever New Year's Eve Winter Classic. I'm Bradford Bruns with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. In just under 90 minutes, 101 ESPN brings you pregame Wrigley Field style. Blues Blackhawks taking matters outside this afternoon. Puck drop formally happens at 4 as St. Louis aims to rebound from Sunday's loss against Buffalo. Chi-Town, meanwhile, hasn't prevailed since December 19th. Football, Music City Bowl MVP Brady Cook guides MU past Iowa 27-24. Later, 9-win Illinois battles South Carolina. Penn State and Boise State also kick off CFP quarterfinal action. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Blues coming up later on this afternoon against the Blackhawks. Puck drop for that at 4 o'clock. Alex going to have an extended pregame show beginning at 2 o'clock right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. So stay tuned for that. You'll hear from Paul Stastny, hear from Eddie O. You'll hear from a bunch of NHL perspectives on today's Winter Classic between the Blues and the Blackhawks. We were scheduled to have Mike Rupp. We're going to catch up with him at a later date. Had some scheduling conflicts, unfortunately, for us. But Alex, in the meantime, it gives us the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the college football playoff. We're not going to have a show tomorrow with it being the New Year day. We will have one last time right now to preview the matchup. So Penn State versus Boise State is the big one tonight. Illinois, by the way, against South Carolina. That's a game that's coming up at 2 o'clock. Alex, do you think South Carolina wins that one?
Yeah, I do. I think they win that one easily. Like you guys said, there's a significantly better quarterback on one side, and that's Sellers with South Carolina, but also without a massive weapon. Like Luke Altmaier's game is through the air, and when you don't have your best wide receiver, that's going to change some things.
Pat Bryant opted out of that one. It's a 9-point favorite in favor of South Carolina. I think they win that one by 2 touchdowns. So give me South Carolina minus the points. The big one, though, is Penn State versus Boise State. This is the game that's played in the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State is an 11.5-point favorite. Alex, to me, the biggest storyline in this is twofold. One, Ashton Genty, one of the best players in the country this year. He's going to be a first-round pick, running back. He's, for people that have not watched much Boise State this year, other than maybe the Oregon game, totally understand it. They're not a nationally prominent program. But the guy's amazing. You're going to have a blast watching him tonight.
Yep.
He's really their one path to victory. They need him to be amazing, and they need the defense to come up with consistent stops. They're going to give up explosive plays. It's what they do. They sell out for turnovers, basically. They want to create chaos for the opposing offense, and when they don't, it goes over their head and it looks real bad. It's kind of similar to the Detroit Lions, honestly, in that regard. Like they either create an explosive play going one way or the other. Alex, to me, the biggest storyline tonight is going to be, hey, was Boise deserving of this bye? Like, should they have been given the first-round bye just based on the fact that they were one of the 4 highest-ranked conference champions? Because if we did this where just the 4 highest-ranked teams get the bye, they wouldn't have been one of them. So that, to me, is what the pressure really is in this one. Some will say it's on James Franklin. Yeah, sure, I suppose. But I think similar to how when Indiana lost, it was like, oh, SMU lost Alabama, who's still losing against Michigan in their bowl game. Alabama clearly should have been in the college football playoff. They put in a worse team because of wins, according to Kirk Herbstreit, because, of course, wins do not matter in college football anymore. That's going to be the conversation coming off of this game tonight if Boise gets boat raced in this game is, oh, you shouldn't have given them the bye. They didn't deserve that.
Yep, I'm totally with you. You're going to see college football knee-jerk reaction if something like that takes place where Boise State gets blown out of the water, where they look at it differently. I'll tell you the part for me that's exciting about that game, though, BK, is like you got 2 difference makers on both sides. Penn State's quarterback, of course, has been really good this season. Yeah, but then when you talk about Ashton Ginty, like, I am so excited to watch him play on a big stage like this. I mean, that dude carried his team to a college football playoff position. Now what do you do when you get to the next level?
The other guy that I would highlight in this one is Tyler Warren. For people that have not watched much of Penn State this year, the guy's amazing. He's huge. He's 6'6", 250 pounds. He's a tight end. I think he won the Mackey this year, if I'm not mistaken, as the best tight end of the country. He's going to be a first-round pick as well. He's not like what you have with Brock Bowers. He's not to that degree, but I think he's gonna be amazing at the next level, and whoever ends up getting him is gonna have a nice weapon to be able to utilize. So he's another guy to watch in that one, another NFL draft prospect that'll be on full display. Who do you have in that one, Bradford? Do you like Penn? I like Penn State not only. I like Penn State to win, but Boise State to cover the 11.5 point spread.
Same thing, because I think in the second half, whether it's Ginty getting on track or Madsen being able to do a little more through the air. My question, though, honestly, guys, from the jump. Now, Penn State, we all understand, has a vastly superior defense. But do you honestly think about taking a page out of the UNLV playbook from that Mountain West Championship and load the box to such a degree that you render Ginty more of a non-factor and make Madsen beat you off the top?
Yeah, that's the game plan. You just
right away.
Can't let Ginty
right away.
Yeah, if I'm Penn State, he's the only guy that can beat me. And if you're able to slow him down or shut him down, you win the football game. So, yeah, that should be the game plan for them. All right, tomorrow, 3 games, starting with Texas versus Arizona State. I don't have a lot of intrigue in this one. The only thing is kind of similar to Boise. If Boise gets blown out tonight and then Arizona State gets blown out tomorrow, boom, there's all you need. Next year, you're not going to have this same setup. Like, they will change this almost immediately to where you don't get the 4 highest-ranked conference champions as the buys. I think Texas wins. I think they end up covering the 12.5 point spread. I think this is your blowout from the next couple of days. How do you feel about this one, Alex?
Same way. I'm won't be watching this game, BK, until it gets to halftime, and if it's close, because otherwise I have no interest in this. Feels like feels a lot like what the first round of the college football playoffs was, to where you watched one team just completely wipe away the competition. So, yeah, this is the one that's probably at the bottom of that rankings for me in terms of interest.
This feels like such a runaway to me, and it's primarily because Kelvin Banks Jr. is back at left tackle for Texas. He is healthy, and he made all of the difference in that round 2 victory over Georgia, for that matter, too, or what could have been, honestly, for that matter. But I'm also looking at this and saying Arizona State would be in a different situation, I believe, if maybe you had that weapon outside in Jordan Tyson to be able to go up and down the field with Texas. That is not the case. So similarly to what Penn State should do, you stack the box and you limit what Scatterbo can do.
Yeah, that's it. That's the entire game plan for them. Let's skip over Ohio State versus Oregon because it's game of the day. That's the middle one. But Notre Dame versus Georgia, so much of this just comes down to, hey, does Georgia have an upgraded quarterback, or is this going to be more of the same to what they had previously with Carson Beck? Beck is out in this one. He's already declared for the NFL draft. I think that was a mistake, but whatever. I think Notre Dame's the better team. I think they have the better quarterback going into this game. I think coaching-wise, they're similar enough. Defense, I don't think Georgia has the massive advantage there that they have had in previous seasons. I also know, though, we've seen multiple different versions of Georgia. When Georgia has gone up against the best teams on their schedule this year, they've been pretty damn good for the most part. It's been when they're on the road against Bama and Ole Miss, like similar programs that they had a little bit of a clunker there. But most of the time when they go up against the real threats, Texas on their schedule, Tennessee earlier this year, they tend to show up. So I just don't know which Georgia we're getting. I'm going to take Notre Dame, and I believe that they win straight up. This is the game, though, that I will not be betting because I just don't have a good feel for either of these teams.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame, and I think the biggest thing is I don't know what Georgia does great. Now, I guess I could argue the same thing with Notre Dame, but, like, they've got 2 running backs that they use, and they can come up with some game-breaking plays.
What they do great is offensive line and run the football.
Yeah. I think that Jeremiah Love has just had, like, back-to-back, like, 100-yard rushing games with two touchdowns in each game. Like, they run the ball, and I'm not sure what Georgia does great. So, to me, I side with Notre Dame, but I can absolutely see where Notre Dame lays a massive egg in this game, too.
Don't overlook Riley Leonard as well in the running game. Their quarterback adds a lot with his legs.
No, he's been incredibly efficient over the past month, but more of the headlines have obviously gone to Love because he has just been that flat-out explosive and dynamic. And here, I'm taking Etienne out of the game if I am the Fighting Irish defense. And really, when it comes down to it in the fourth quarter, Riley Leonard at the beginning of the season, yeah, he went through his struggles, but I would much rather take that seasoned veteran in that environment as opposed to Stockton. I don't know what you're going to see from him.
All right, big game. Last one. Ohio State versus Oregon. It really comes down to Will Howard.
Yep.
Which version of Will Howard do we get? Do we get the version that sucked against Michigan, the version that could not come through in the clutch against Oregon earlier this season, or do we get the guy that went out there and just looked fantastic against Tennessee in the first round of the college football playoff? If he's that version of Will Howard, they're going to have a chance, and they probably will end up winning this game against Oregon. I think Oregon, though, has the better quarterback. I think they have the better coach going into this game, and defensively, I think it's close enough that I don't think that's going to determine the game. One thing that I think will be worth monitoring, similar to the conversation that we have about Dan Campbell. Dan Lanning is completely unafraid to make a controversial decision on fourth down. And it has cost them. It has worked out for them. It's gone somewhere in between at times. But that is going to be the thing that I will be paying attention to in this game is when you get into a big spot late in the game, then potentially up by like 4 points, let's say, 4th and 2 from the opposing 35. Do they go for the field goal in that spot? I don't think so. I think Dan Lanning is going for it there, and that will be the discussion point coming out of it is whether or not they get that or they fail, and then they give an opportunity to Ohio State to potentially go the other way and win the game. But that to me is something worth monitoring. Similar to Dan Campbell, he is unafraid to make those difficult decisions. I like Oregon. I think they're the best team in the country. I've said it all season long. I'll take them straight up and certainly against the spread.
And BK, just exactly what you said is why I think that's going to be the most watched game and it's going to be the most entertaining game, because I got a coach that just does not give a bleep, and he's going to go out there and make some moves. And I think you got the better quarterback on Oregon's side, which is why I'm picking Oregon, cover the spread, win straight up. Dylan Gabriel is the better quarterback, and Will Howard is just, unfortunately, he's a liability at times. So I'm going to go with the better quarterback, the better coach, even if he just does say YOLO sometimes in weird situations.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. That's our college football playoff preview here on BK and Ferrario. We will give you our final thoughts heading into today's Winter Classic game between the Blues and the Blackhawks coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Jamie Rivers here, and this is my latest jersey giveaway of the season. It is a signed Jordan Binnington Winter Classic jersey, the OG, the original from the very first one at Busch Stadium. It is awesome. We all love that baby blue, and you look great wearing it too. Get entered to win that autographed Binner jersey right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Winner must be 21 or older. Jersey giveaway is refreshed by Bud Light. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley for our friends at Circa Sports in Illinois. It is time to place your bets over the next couple of days. We've got the second round of the college football playoff. We just gave you our preview, my picks. Penn State minus the points, Texas minus the points, and then Oregon and Notre Dame as slight underdogs to win straight up on the money line. You parlay those four picks together over on Circa Sports in Illinois, put $10 down on it. Wins you $143. Alex, the reason why I'm betting on Circa, they've got better odds. Not only are you winning more money by betting with Circa, I also get a minus 11 and minus 12 on Penn State and Texas instead of minus 11.5 and minus 12.5. That hook, I don't have to worry about it over at Circa. They're giving you better odds. The best odds are possible for you with Circa Sports in Illinois.
And they're keeping as little money as possible, BK. So when you want to bring in the most with those 8-leg parlays that I like to talk about, that you probably need to invest your time into, that's why you do it over at Circa Sports. Hell, we'll do it with this one right now. Blues Blackhawks Winter Classic. Make sure you use the tight money line spread because the Blues minus 1.5, better odds at Circa Sports Illinois. So whatever your betting odds are, do it at Circa Sports Illinois. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
When you buy a new house, you might say,
101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. Check out either the 101 mobile app or 101ESPN.com for your chance to win a signed puck autographed by Blues defenseman Justin Falk.
Falk shoots it. He scores!
Get entered to win that Justin Falk signed puck right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app, powered by the Schaefer Door Company.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
Earlier today, we had the distinct pleasure to be joined by Jeremy Rutherford and Scottie Upshall. Both of us gave us their perspective on today's Winter Classic, a game that you will hear right here in its entirety on 101 ESPN, your home of the Blues, starting at 4 o'clock. But Alex is going to have pregame coverage, an extended pregame show for you, beginning at the top of the 2 o'clock hour. So if you're a Blues fan, you don't need to go anywhere else. Right here on 101 ESPN is where you need to be. Alex, Blues versus Blackhawks. I've got the Blues winning in this one. I know you do as well. It's a big game for them. They can't really lose this one. They've got too many bad losses already on their resume. What are you anticipating? What are you most looking forward to in this one? Blues versus Blackhawks at Wrigley. Just an unbelievable environment for this.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, BK, like just sitting out here looking at it, like you're starting to see things like ramp up for game time. Like they've got the lights on here at Wrigley Field. The snow or the rain is starting to lighten up a little bit. But I'm expecting this to be a tight hockey game. I mean, look, anytime Joey and I are going to talk about this on pregame today. Like I've had a couple of different buddies text me and ask if it's still a rivalry, and it's like, dude, it doesn't matter if Chicago's bad or the Blues are bad. This will always be a rivalry. You always get up for these types of games. So I'm expecting this one to be tight, but I think you're going to see a very distinguished, buttoned-up Blues team on the ice. Like I think they realized they made some mistakes in that Buffalo game. With these types of conditions, you can't make mistakes. So I think this is going to be tight, but I do see the Blues coming out on top.
I've got them winning this one as well. I'm going to go ahead and take the under 5.5. I know it's a bold strategy, but I think the Blues win this one 4-1. I've got Blues win 4-1, so under 5.5. Blues on the money line, and I've got Dylan Holloway to score 2 goals in this one. So those three, you parlay that together, $10 wager. This is an Alex Ferrario bet for you. Wins $1,300. How about that? That's the kind of bet that I know my guy Alex Ferrario would want to make.
Throw in a Ryan Suter goal as well. I'm going to take Scottie Upshall's bet on that one. That's probably going to get to like $3,500 in return.
There you go. That is what we are anticipating for this one. I think Dylan Holloway is the one that ends up breaking out on a national stage. JR told us he's got Robert Thomas. Upshall told us he thinks it's going to be a Ryan Suter moment. So
that's who I like.
We'll see with that. And then Alex said earlier today, Jake Neighbors as well. So plenty to get into between 2 o'clock and the start of this one at 4 for Alex. He's going to be broadcasting live out at Wrigley Field, where the Blues and the Blackhawks will be taking the ice for a unbelievable event at Wrigley Field for the Winter Classic this season. Third one the Blues have been a part of in the last 8 years. For Bradford Bruns, who did a fantastic job for us today, and Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. Thank you guys so much for making what we do possible. Have a very happy new year. Be safe out there. Be smart. Get an Uber for yourself. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday here on 101 ESPN.
The Blues season is in full swing, and you can tune in this Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. to hear BK and Ferrario live from the E&P Granite Studio at the Centene Community Ice Center.
Brought to you by Bud Light for the fans on game day, and by E&P Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.